Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
Congratulations, sir.
Let me do it.
Okay. For our next nomination will be to nominate our board secretary.
Madam President, I'll make a motion to nominate Noreen Scott for Secretary of Board of Education.
Noreen, would you accept that nomination?
Would you like me to second that, Noreen? Make yourself feel good? Yeah, I got you. We would love to second that nomination.
Okay.
Mhm.
Let me write down other nominations. Any other nominations? Okay. So with that, we'll take a roll call vote for our board secretary being Noreen Scott.
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Okay. So we will now go to the appointment of our finance committee chairperson. Our current,
Madam President,
ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to
Man, you're
nominate
busy
Jessica Tyler.
tonight.
I wanted to do this.
I wanted to. Okay, go ahead.
Finance Chair.
so Jessica Tyler is finance chair,
Yes.
right?
I'll second that. I
I will-
really have enjoyed working with you, and I'm really excited that you're going to take that job.
Is that something you'd be willing to take on again? Okay. So other nominations? Okay. So with that, we'll go for another roll call. Kim, if you'll do that for Jessica Tyler as our finance committee chairperson.
Okay. Hang on here just a second. Let me. Oh, it's trying to. Never mind. We'll just do it. We'll do it the old-fashioned way. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
Congratulations.
So now, okay. Yeah. You're right. So now we're going to appoint our audit committee chairperson.
Okay.
I'll-
Madam
Would you like me
President.
to nominate you, Gary, so you don't have to nominate yourself?
No. I'd like to nominate Noreen Scott. I'd like to still serve on it and help her, but our economic leader for many years in this community with a lot of knowledge is Noreen Scott. And I'd love to be her right-hand person, but I'd like to nominate Noreen Scott for the audit committee chair.
Okay. So that's for our audit committee chair.
And I'll second that.
Okay. And so in this one too, we will elect a board member. So I'd like to nominate Gary Tripp as our board member to serve on our audit committee as well. Any other nominations for that?
No, I'll second that as well.
Okay. Okay. So we have Noreen Scott as our chair for audit committee and Gary Tripp as our board member to serve on the audit committee. And if you will take a roll call vote for those two items.
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
And congratulations to you both.
Thank you. And before we move on from all of these appointments, we didn't really have a lot of changes as we went through these, and so in the past we have kept our positions for 2 years, and that's how most boards do it within the state. We're pretty different. Dr. Cleveland and I have talked about that over the years. And so something we might look at, and I'm not saying for this one because we're going to have elections coming up. And so I would think this term should be a year, but something we might put on our next agenda is to look at that policy and see if we want to make changes to that. And so this would be I'm thinking a 1 year, and then we could look at that that change just taking place in the next year. So something to keep on your mind. If you are all interested in that, I'd like to put that onto the agenda for
I
our next
agree.
meeting.
I think that it's silly to do this every year. I think it just takes time, and you really don't know what you're doing for the first year. It's a challenge to learn and catch up and understand. So
Okay. That sounds great. So thank you all. And I look forward to serving with you all again this year. You're all just fantastic. So with that, we'll go to our introductory comments by our Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Visu Cleveland.
thank you. And again,
Congratulations to everyone. And it has been a pleasure to work with this board. And I think we've accomplished a lot of really good things. And so not only personally, but I would want to thank you on behalf of the staff for your professionalism and your willingness to donate your time and effort to the children of this school district. And it is more time consuming, I think, than maybe you think initially, but we appreciate that community service and we appreciate your serving on the board. Okay, introductory remarks. The last item we've already talked about, I would just add one thing to that, and it is what Noreen said. It takes a little while to learn a lot of it. The processes, for example, for selecting an auditor and how you go through that process. And most organizations of any size have gone to 2-year appointments or elections because it gives you some time to really learn the role and the position. But obviously, that's a decision that is important that the board needs to think about and make and would need to act on it in a meeting. Okay, the first order of business, we've had the reorganization. Again, congratulations to everyone. All right. And Happy New Year, by the way. All right. We have our first commendation is to thank Nusenda for their long-standing support of our school district. I would want you to know that they have assisted this district in different capacities since the very beginning, year one. When we first started as a district, not everybody in the metro area was thrilled, and it was a little bit of an adjustment for a while. But Nusenda is one of those that stepped up immediately, and the person that showed up on my doorstep was Charlotte Reinhardt, and said, "How can we help you? How can we be of assistance to you?" And so, very thankful for all of the support that Nusenda has given us over the years. The board will be asked this evening to accept a $15,000 sponsorship for the district. And Beth Pendergrass, our Chief Communications Strategy and Engagement Officer, will share some more information on this sponsorship and exactly what it entails. We have a donation this evening. Hewitt Zollers is a local engineering firm. We have done some work with them over the years. Has donated plotter paper rolls that they cannot use for their own business purposes, but they definitely are very usable in an educational environment. Obviously, based on board policy, the board has to accept all donations. And so we'll be asking you this evening to approve this donation. We certainly thank Hewitt Zollers for reaching out to our district because, as you probably know, plotter paper is quite expensive. And so this donation will certainly be put to very good use. We have some reports this evening. The first one will be our Human Resources report. Mike Chavez, our Executive Director for Human Resources, will present their annual report, and it will include several items. He will talk about the organizational structure of HR, as they have several different divisions. One of the priorities for the board has been ensuring that we have strong recruitment and retention of high-quality staff. We'll be sharing with you some of the things that they have done, and they've been very successful at that. This has been the best year in terms of staffing that we have had in quite a long time. They do a lot to promote the safety and wellness of our staff. It's one of their key roles is to support and help our staff when they have certain special needs. And then they manage and support our benefits program, which is NIMSIA. I would just add a little quick aside to that. NIMSIA has some financial challenges next year. We are hoping that the legislature will work with them to resolve that and that will not be passed on to our employees. The other thing is over the last several years, we've become very concerned about the benefits themselves from NIMSIA, especially when we compare that to the Albuquerque Public School District. And that's a recruitment issue for us. And so you may have heard that in the press conference a week or two ago, that the governor's made a commitment to look at those benefits and try to get them to be comparable across the state. It'd be very good news for us, and we hope that that is successful. But benefits are an important part of compensation, and they certainly impact whether people come here or whether they stay or go somewhere else. So we're going to watch that very carefully through the legislative session. Sometimes we have a need for investigations for the protection of our staff and students. We have a great team that works very hard in that area to make sure that we have the right information on which to make decisions. They've been going through a major software conversion, which is always a pain in the neck, a very challenging effort, but they're moving through that, and they'll share a little bit about where they are on that, and then their challenges and continuous improvement efforts in that department. Jay Reeder, our Executive Director for Special Services, will present the annual report for their department. This is a very large department. I don't know if it's the largest in the district, but it's certainly one of the largest. It too has many different components. And so he will be talking about several things. One is just the overall, the overview of that department. Secondly, he's going to talk a little bit about child find requirements, how children are found that need services, particularly very young children. And the sooner we find them, the sooner we intervene, the better our chances are really making some major gains. Shining Stars Preschool is a great example of that. He'll be talking about the teaching and learning in special education, as well as the ancillary or related services that help students so they can learn. And we're talking about all of those services that we offer. We're talking about the continuum of services provided by the district, and in greater detail, the related services that are necessary to help our students be successful in the classroom and successful in terms of social skills and communication skills. And then we'll conclude as well with the challenges and opportunities for continuous improvement. We'll be talking a little bit about Spark Academy this evening. Janice Chanel, the Elementary School Improvement Officer, will provide you with an update on the status of this school. You asked for that last year, and we'll be trying to answer the questions that you raised. A lot of new information is going to be provided to the board this evening. The board may want to study and review this information before making a decision if you feel like it's too much information and you need some time to think about it. So we certainly understand, and there's time to do that. We also have no definitive financial information at this time regarding school budgets. So I can't tell you what our financial picture will be next year because we certainly don't know that yet. This is a 60-day session, and historically in 60-day sessions, we don't get any really specific budget information until April. So that's the downside for a long session, because once it's over, they have to take all of that and turn it into a unit value. There is a hope, it doesn't happen very often, but there is a hope that they might get it to the governor earlier this session. If they do, then she has 5 days, I think, to sign it. If it gets there at the end of the session, she has 30 days to sign it, and the session ends March the 17th. So that gives you a little idea about the timeline that we might be facing in terms of the budget. Okay, the Spark Academy presentation this evening is going to include their efforts. You know, one of the things that the board said last year is, let's make a real effort to see if we can recruit students to the program, see how much interest there is in the community. They will share what they've done in that area. Some of the programs and services that they provide students at Spark, the student profiles and demographics, who are the students currently attending the program, and some parent and student feedback about their feelings about the program. And then looking at the academic performance of the students attending there, the staffing challenges, but we've got some great staff there, great leadership there, what the financial picture looks like, challenges, and particularly a couple of areas. One of those is space, as Joe Harris continues to grow, and it's growing. It's in a high growth area for Rio Rancho. And then for the school itself, expansion concerns. A long story, in terms of the future, those two are not going to be able to stay at the same place forever. So that's just something to think about as well. We will have an RFP award tonight for architect design services. Michael Madrid, who is our purchasing director, will provide you all the information on the award of architect design services. This is for CTE. There were 6 firms. It was a good response who submitted bids for the project. Everyone was determined to be responsive, so they all qualified to be looked at. The bids were evaluated and ranked, and then the top 3 were invited in for in-depth interviews for the services, and those interview ratings were added to the initial scores of those top 3. And so Mr. Madrid will be sharing with you who the evaluation committee is recommending for that particular award. Do you have any questions?
Any questions from the board?
No questions.
Okay, no
Okay.
questions.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Cleveland. We always appreciate those. Okay, we'll move to our next item, which is going to be our public comment. We do have 2 in-person public comments that will come up in just a moment. Before we get to those, I'm going to give our public comment that came in through our form. And we received, from our form, we received 16 public comments. 14 of those were in regards to keeping Spark Academy open. So 2 of those, our first one was Gary Anderson. He was asking us to put metal detectors in our schools. We also received one from Jessica Jones. I didn't quite understand Jessica Jones's what she was asking, but it sounds as though she has an issue with the time school ends and work issues with trying to get to work. Our other ones, I will just name out the names who are asking us to keep Spark Academy open. That's Jonathan Daniels, Tanya Navaco, Tori Everhart, Erica Inman, Shane O'Neill, Larissa Chavez, Jody Chavez Escorino. I'm so sorry I'm saying your names wrong. Stephanie Solasbal, Alexis Rell, Paula Altman, Olivia Cruz, Jessica Lee sent in 2 to us, and Sylvia Baca. So all of those are in regards, and we have read all of those, but all of those are in regards to keeping Spark Academy open. So with that, we would like to move into our in-person public comment. So for our in-person public comment, they will have 3 minutes to address the board. With those 2, I am going to say your last name's wrong, so I'm just going to call you up by your first name, and then if you please just state your first and last name as you give your public comment, that would be wonderful. So you have 3 minutes. Everything else is in our agenda, which you should have picked up. Please don't have any expressions of obscene or profane or disruptive or anything disorderly. So with that, we would like to invite up Manuel. Is Manuel here? Manuel, and you, when you start talking, Kim will start a timer for 3 minutes and you'll have 3 minutes. We will not address you right now, but this is on our agenda later, so we probably will address it later on tonight. Okay.
Manuel Castaneda. Distinguished board, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm also speaking in favor of Spark Academy. Very appreciative of the program. It's certainly innovative. We're new to the program, to Spark Academy. This is the first year our girls are there, but we can't say enough about their teacher, Mr. Molinar, Principal Aker. They've been so supportive. We've seen tremendous academic growth in our girls. And I think it's such an innovative program because it blends digital methods, right? And our kids now are used to working on computers and tablets and plays to their strengths. So it blends that and it balances it with more traditional in-person methods. So I think it's a great innovative program. Thank you for your leadership for establishing that program, and I encourage you to continue to fund it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, our second public comment is Alexis. Thank you so much for being here.
Distinguished board, thank you for having me today. I am a 15-year teacher here in Rio Rancho Public Schools. I am a teacher at Spark Academy this year. It's my first year here. I actually taught online during the pandemic and then went back to teaching in person and realized that I so much loved the online learning program that I transferred back to Spark this year. And I just am hoping that you all will give us a chance to grow and bloom. I think we have an amazing program and we reach a lot of kids who don't always get seen. And I think that the students that we have really deserve the place that they have. And so I've got students who love learning from home, and they're the kind of students who like maybe a quiet space, and that might be because of the sensory needs that they have, and they have the support at home where that works for them and their families. And so they can have that kind of quiet environment where that they can work and learn and then go back and do the things that they need. And then they also get the benefit of coming in to see us in person, which is amazing. I have other students who learn really quickly, and they get online with me, they do their work, and then they are able to get off and go do their own self-pursued interests and play Legos or make amazing things. And then they get on and show me these amazing things that they do. And I have other students who maybe take their time and get the support from parents, or they have the opportunity to get back on with me and learn somewhere in between. And I think that that is a really unique thing, and that opportunity also to come in person is unique. And so I think we haven't gotten the chance to see what Spark can really become yet because we're so young, and I don't think that enough people know about what we are, and we're just in the infancy of what that can grow into. But I think that should you all give us the chance, we could really grow into something beautiful, especially under our amazing principal's leadership. So I hope that you all will consider that as you're looking forward to the budget this year. Thank you.
Thank you. And real quick before you sit down, will you just say your last name for us?
I'm a Rel Sagum.
Okay.
Rel Sagum.
Okay. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. And once again, we won't comment on that now, but that is a topic that we have later on our agenda. And so we will be talking about it. So we'll go into our commendations now, and we'll start with our Nusenda commendation, and Beth Pendergrass, our Chief Communication Strategy and Engagement Officer, is here to present this. You can.
Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, and members of the board. I'm pleased to be here this evening to present a $15,000 scholar or sponsorship from Nusenda, and I have with me Sarah Keller, who is their Vice President of Community Engagement from Nusenda. And also I wanted to thank her in person as well, because she has helped us. The process has changed a little bit for Nusenda and a couple times while I've been doing it. And she was so helpful to make sure we got all our stuff in and that we were going to get that sponsorship, which is so important to us. As Dr. Cleveland said, Nusenda has supported the school district since we were established. And that support has been our primary means of being able to appreciate our staff. As you know, we have budgetary restrictions, and so the Nusenda sponsorship allows us to appreciate, give our staff appreciation gifts, the staff recognition events, and of course the biggest event, which is our retirement celebration, where we recognize our volunteers of the year, our retirees, and years of service. And so that's a huge thing that we're able to offer our staff and show our appreciation because of Nusenda. And so I just wanted to recognize them and also bring it to the board for your approval.
Okay. Sarah, did you want to say anything before we go into?
Okay.
You're welcome to.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this evening. It's really wonderful to be in this room. It's been a whole lifetime since I was here last. Nusenda is founded in education. We started as a public schools credit union, evolved into New Mexico educators, and still as Nusenda, education is really at the heart and at the root of everything that we do. And we know that teachers, staff, substitutes, retirees have had a really hard few years. And even prior to the pandemic have had this is a challenging profession. This is a challenging and tremendously rewarding profession for folks to get into. And really at the center of it is our kids and our future. And as a parent of a soon-to-be kindergartner at Sandia Vista in the fall, I'm even more excited to be able to be a small part of what makes Rio Rancho Public Schools great. Nusenda is really proud to be able to support Rio Rancho Public Schools, the great work of your staff, your teachers, your substitutes, and your retirees for the legacy that they are leaving in our state for our kiddos and for our future. So thank you for allowing us to be a small piece of what makes everything great here. And we look forward to see what the future holds.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. So we are going to consider the acceptance of this. So,
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to accept the Nusenda $15,000 Rio Rancho Public Schools sponsorship.
With pleasure, I would like to second that.
okay. We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Noreen Scott. Should we take a roll call vote on this? Okay, go ahead.
Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. I think I've been using Nusenda, I think, for 25 years. I was trying to count it up as you were, and all of my children have accounts there. And so,
Well, truly, it's from the very beginning, and they have been a wonderful partner. And when we had our 20th anniversary, they sponsored the writing of the 20th anniversary book. And there's just so many things over the years, and things we can't do on our own. I mean, we're not able to do those things, and so it's wonderful to be able to show that support of our staff, and have opportunities to thank our retirees and so forth that under current regulations we couldn't do without that support. So thank you so much.
thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Our next commendation will be for the plotter paper rolls donation from Hewlett Zollers. Kim Vesley, our assistant to the superintendent, will be discussing this with us.
I'll just go ahead and present from here if that's all right with you. We got a email from a representative at Wheat Zollers a few weeks ago offering the donation of this paper. And it's perfectly good paper. There are issues with them being able to use it for the purposes that they originally ordered it for, but they do want to make sure that somebody can make good use of it. And our high schools, Rio Rancho and Cleveland High, have both expressed an interest in having this paper. It'll be very helpful for the things that they use with banners and those sorts of things. So wanted to go ahead and, since donations need to come to the board, wanted to present that to you and ask you to approve the acceptance of the donation.
I move that we accept the donation from Hewlett Zollers.
It's Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Okay. Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm so grateful for our community and just all the things that they're willing to donate to us. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to say anything? I know that you talked about it. Yeah,
We are appreciative of it.
Yeah.
Paper's very expensive,
it is expensive.
period.
I feel like everything is so expensive right now. So thank you so much. Okay, so now moving into reports. We have 2 reports tonight. Our first will be a department update for Human Resources, and we welcome Mike Chavez, our Executive Director of Human Resources.
Good evening, President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. Before I get started, I just want to say to everybody that I'd like to express how grateful I am to get the opportunity on a daily basis to come to work and work with, first of all, the most incredible people in the whole district, my staff in the Human Resources Department. But not only them, as most of you know, I've been here almost as long as Dr. Cleveland, not quite, but since 1995. And in that time, I've been incredibly fortunate to meet many of our staff members. But I feel incredibly fortunate also to be able to work with all of our staff. I have a fabulous boss. We obviously have the best superintendent in the state, and I think we have the best school board in the state. So I just wanted to say that. Little bit of a department overview. Dr. Cleveland mentioned earlier that we do have several sub-departments in our department, and we've done that very purposefully so that we can specialize. We have what we call specialists in all of our departments, and we specialize in areas like staffing. Those are the folks that bring new hires on board, help people with transfers, help people with just about anything that they need to do in order to make sure they're established in the right place and the right job in the district. We have our compensation specialists who help people. They set up the pay records so that that information can be transmitted over to the payroll department and so that folks can get their paychecks. Pretty important to most people. We have our benefits department. And as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, The benefits folks not only help folks with their NMCA benefits, their medical benefits, and other benefits, but they also help people with all of their leave. Anything having to do with a leave necessity, they are the folks that our staff goes to. So if they have workman's comp issues, if they have ADA issues, if they have FMLA issues, our benefits people are there to help them. We have an investigations department, and we'll talk a little bit later about some changes that have been made there. But right now we actually have 3 people working in that small department. We have a manager and 2 other personnel investigators. And then finally, we have our substitute services department, which is working very closely right now with Kelly Services and ensuring that we get substitutes in the right places, but also working with our frontline program to again help people with their leave, making sure that people can enter their leave properly, making sure that their leave is into frontline correctly, and that their leave is taken out of their paycheck properly. The RRPS strategic plan, I think you all have seen this a couple of times now. I want to tell you that our professional development in my department has focused incredibly strongly around the RRPS strategic plan over the last probably couple of years, but particularly since we've rewritten it. And one of the things that we have spent a lot of time reflecting on in the department are our processes and procedures and how we can have a very strong impact on the staff, not just in those particular areas that we just talked about, but in a general sense, especially in areas like retention, staff excellence. So let's move on to staff excellence. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things we do. For example, we have monthly job fairs. We have worked very hard, and I've talked to you about this before, on targeted advertising. We have new hire orientations with every single employee at the beginning of their employment. We have one-on-one meetings. So Peggy Johnston and I, we hold one-on-one meetings with every potential teaching candidate, particularly those who are going into alternative licensure, but also with anybody who may have questions about going into a teaching position if they're not sure that that's the exact thing that they're thinking about doing. We have strong support for the mentorship program, and we've been very, very proud this year to partner with the C&I department in the beginning teacher mentorship program, but also in lots of other areas where we do ongoing mentorship of teachers so that we can continue to support teachers. And we're working on in staff excellence towards retention of teachers, because we see our job as not only getting teachers into the district and getting them in place, but helping the district hang on to our teachers. We have strong staff support via the EAP program, the Employee Assistance Program. And one of the most important things that we talk about is high level of staff support throughout all of the human resources processes. So I'll explain a little bit what that means. What we talk about is that when we hire a teacher, and really anybody in any position, but we'll talk about teachers, that teacher is in that classroom, they need to be focused on teaching. They need to be focused on what their job is in that classroom. They don't need to be worried all day long about something about their benefits, or is their pay correct, or is their license, do they need help getting their license renewed? That's where we come in. That's where we constantly communicate with our staff and let them know, if you need help, we are here to help you. We are here to assist you. We are here to support you. And we are open to any and all assistance that we can give to our staff. We have ongoing training opportunities for our administrators. We reach out constantly to our administrators to work with them. They have all of our admin people's cell phone numbers, and we're always open to talking to them anytime. As far as engagement and innovation, the thing I focused on a lot here has to do with teachers, but it has a lot to do with ensuring proper licensure and degrees for all of our instructional staff. And that doesn't mean just looking at them and saying, hey, you don't have the right thing. It's helping them get the right thing. Some of the folks, we work with EAs, for example, to help them get their bachelor's degree. There's programs out there to help people get certification. We have strong support of all instructional staff with the renewal and initial licensure process. We have support of licensure advancement, and we have assistance with career development and advancement. Safety and wellness. We support our staff through the EAP program. And we, as Dr. Cleveland is aware, we have increased the staff use of our EAP program significantly over the past several years. The last couple of years were a little bit of a challenge. I don't know if you noticed, but a lot of people did find them very challenging, and we have significantly increased our advertising of the EAP program to try to help our staff understand that this is there for you. This is for you. It doesn't have to be, EAP is kind of interesting. It doesn't have to be that you're really experiencing stress or anxiety or whatever. They'll even talk to you about financial planning. They'll talk to you about whatever it is you want to talk about. It needs to be something that's bothering you. So call the EAP program. You get 3 free sessions, and they can work with, and then they work with folks to try to find a counselor that will fit them. They don't just give you those 3 sessions and say, okay, thanks a lot, see you later. Our enhancement center actually works with people to find them a counselor that fits them, their financial abilities, their insurance. They are a fabulous group of people. We have supportive staff through FMLA, workers' comp, ADA, any other leave request. We support our staff through direct conversations regarding concerns with either the director, Peggy Johnston, or myself. I have people come in all the time who just may say, I'm just really worried about this that's going on in my site. And it's not necessarily a complaint. It might just be a real concern. And we'll say, come on in, let's sit down, let's talk about it and try to figure something out. We support staff through the benefits process. And as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, we conduct very thorough investigations, but also very fair investigations for staff and student safety. Operational excellence, we utilize our Talent Ed records so that we have gotten to the point where we have streamlined things to the point where if we have onboarded people in 48 hours in certain cases. If an employee will go and do all of their tasks, get their background check done, and turn everything into us, we can get people onboarded in as little as 2 days. And it's just, it's a matter of working with people. And we have continual, I meet with every one of those subgroups every single week. The admin team does every single week. We meet once a week, and then once a month, we meet with the entire department. New this year, as Dr. Cleveland mentioned, we are moving away from our old HRIS system, Alio, and which is a very good thing, but it's a very stressful thing because we're moving into a brand new system and moving that much data. You've got to remember, we have about 3,000 employees at any given time when you count contractors, subs, other people. And we move around 500 to 600 new people per year. So we've done that for about 26, 27 years now. So there's a lot of people in this system, and trying to move all that data, make sure we don't lose any data, and make sure that we're going to be able to have all that data available. And David talked about this a little bit last time, but you have to have all that data available on July 1st so that when you do payroll next time, everybody gets paid, everybody's information is there, Nothing can get lost. So it's challenging, but it's also very exciting because the new program is so much more modern. It's going to be much, much better. It's going to be great. Another really neat thing this year is when I talked about the personnel investigator department, what we did is we actually partnered up with the transportation department. Lynn Carl took one of her safety specialist positions, converted it to an investigator position. Karen Martinez moved over there to the transportation department, and she has been focusing on working with Lynn on videos from the buses and working with the principals so that we can work on student safety and discipline on the buses. Karen is fabulous with the videos. She's also a trained investigator. She's an ex-police officer, and she is working very, very well with the transportation department, assisting them, assisting the principals, and helping to mitigate a lot of the discipline issues on the buses. Some of the highlights: we've increased the number of teachers in the classrooms significantly. The last I checked, we were under 10 teacher openings district-wide. Fewer vacancies overall, full complement of bus drivers. We have hired completely bus drivers as well as custodial staff. And we've converted many of our documents to Spanish so that we can work with people in some of these positions where we're able to hire folks who are Spanish speakers and fill many of our positions that way. Some of the challenges, we talked about the conversion and converting data into the new school ERP program. And once in a while, because as you know, we're very tight over in our building over there. We have lost a couple of our conference rooms just from having to find places for people to have offices. And it does make it a little tough when you're an HR department because you need, so we typically use my office as the conference room. And so it makes it a little tough for confidential space sometimes. But other than that, we feel like we're really moving along. We have such fabulous support from the cabinet, from everybody at the district. Opportunities for improvement: continue to seek ways to ensure that new staff feel welcome, supported, ready to begin working for Rio Rancho Public Schools, and contribute to the retention of staff. Planning for the future: we really need to learn more about the functionality of school ERP and all the different modules that it comes with, because we feel like that's going to increase our efficiency even more, which will ultimately lead to being able to work better with staff, which leads to recruiting, retention, and being just a better department. And I stand for questions.
Dr. Cleveland, do you want to add anything before we go over to questions?
No, I think it's a very thorough report. Thank you, Mike. It's a really great overview of your department.
Yeah, I agree. All right, Gary Tripp, any questions?
Yeah, just a couple. Mike, excellent report. Thank you so much. I just wanted to ask, because you had said that there was an under 10 teachers opening, and you mentioned custodians and bus drivers, and I think you said it was pretty low, and I just wanted to ask about educational assistant openings in the classroom.
Educational assistant openings still are still very high. As we discussed earlier, as I mentioned to the board, and the board made the commitment, and I noticed that it was in the legislative priorities. I still feel very strongly the only thing that's going to change that is to change the pay structure for educational assistants. When you make $20,000 a year, so even at $15 an hour, if you work 190 days, you're only going to make about $20,000. And I don't think that $20,000 is enticing to a lot of people. I think we have very strong supervisors in our schools. And I think the people who are educational assistants really enjoy their jobs. But I think that it's difficult. Beth and I have done some very, very targeted advertising towards EAs, and we found that it was not not nearly as successful as with custodians and bus drivers. I truly think that this is going to have to be a legislative priority. If they move things to say 30, 35, and 40, do some sort of tiered program. That's just my opinion, but I think that's what it's going to take to, if they really want to. And I know that this is a statewide issue because I've spoken to my colleagues across the state. And this is something that all school districts are facing is a lack of educational assistance.
Yeah, Dr. Cleveland has something to
I
add.
would just add one thing. I think on top of certainly went up to $15 an hour, but on top of that, their health insurance went up significantly, as did their contribution to retirement. So their actual take-home discretionary income didn't move at all. And many of our educational assistants work for benefits. That's one of the reasons they take the job. They need benefits for their family. It is not a livable wage situation. We had last week a conversation with one of our delegation who is committed to trying to improve salaries for educational assistants. But I agree with Mike Chavez. I think until we see an increase in that pay, we're going to continue to have this challenge. Most of our educational assistants work with children with disabilities, and some of them work with our most severe children. And so they have, we certainly have a little bit of additional compensation for that, but nothing like really you should pay for someone's level of work with some of the needs of our kids. I mean, it's just really severe children who really need a lot of love and support and help. So it is a significant problem, and I don't think superintendents are the same. I don't think any of us think we're going to see that change. But without it, you really handicap the ability of your special ed teachers to be successful. And that's what I think sometimes people don't know, as they need that help and support to be able to meet the needs of all the children in their classrooms. So it is a problem, and it is one the state is going to have to address.
No, I couldn't agree more, and thank you for that. The other question I have is for you and Dr. Cleveland, and it's a tough time to be a board member, and we're looking at Spark Academy, and I like to see what the classroom averages look like across the district, K through 5, if we could in the future, because we got to look at what services we're providing for the student population.
Well, we maintain classroom averages at the state mandated levels.
Okay.
We are required to, and we do maintain those averages. And as a matter of fact, so I'm very fortunate. I have a truly remarkable administrative staff in my department. I have 2 directors. Peggy Johnston is one I mention all the time, but I also have Marisa de Aragon, and she has a background in economics and finance, and she is our analytics director. She does analysis for us. She works very closely with Heather over in finance. She works very closely with Mike Baker a lot, and she is the one who watches carefully all of our allocations, and she does all of the school allocations, and she watches very closely to make sure that the teachers are being allocated out, and we watch the numbers as they come in. So when 40th day numbers come in, for example, we go through all of those and we take a look and see and ensure that we're not significantly over. Now, we can't guarantee if we're over 1 or 2 here and there. That's just the way statistically it goes. But we do meet the state mandates as far as classroom size.
What is the
Thank
state
you.
mandate?
Jana could probably help me more with that.
It's 20 in kindergarten, 22 in first and second, and 24
in 3, 4, 5. And then in middle school, it's 100 and for all core and 130 in English. And the same in high school, correct? Yeah, 160 per teacher, and 130 in English.
We would still like to see those numbers go down.
We'd love
over
to see those
time,
numbers go
Very
down.
much so. But you will probably recall, Board Member Chubb, at one point we were 20% over.
Mhm.
And so we made a huge commitment to get that back down to the state requirements. But I do consistently hear from teachers that they could do better if they could have smaller classrooms, and we know that. But we made such tremendous progress, and we'll continue to work on it. But it's despite what some folks will tell you, class size matters, and it matters a lot. And so it's been a real effort, but it's so much better than it was. But we'd love to see it come down even some more. The other thing, sometimes when you see the overall numbers on the ratio, you would also have to keep in mind that many special ed classrooms, the numbers are quite small. So when you take all of that together, you see the numbers, you think, well, that doesn't look quite right for the district. When you put in all the special classes that may have a limit of 8 students, for example, per classroom, it brings that number down, and it isn't really reflective of what that average classroom teacher in the district sees. So I just kind of wanted to let you know we've made a lot of progress in that area.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I have all these thoughts going through my mind now, Gary, but I'm going to hold him. Jeffrey Morgan, go ahead.
Mike, I don't have any questions. I just want to say very nice presentation. Really appreciate the work.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Noreen,
Mr. Chavez, I should have said.
Yeah.
Sorry.
go ahead, Noreen Scott,
Thank you. I agree. Nice presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
and Jessica Tyler.
I do have one comment. I did notice on your monthly job fairs that you guys hold on the same time and same day every month. Is that correct? Or that's what I would just suggest maybe varying that, because it might be constrictive to some people being able to attend. So even once a quarter, if you held it at a different time or day, I don't know if it's conducive to everybody's schedule, but that might be helpful. A lot of people might not be able to make it on a Wednesday at 5, and if that's the only job fair, we might be missing a pool of applicants for that.
Yeah, that's good.
And then just to comment on board member or on Gary's comment. I mean, my daughter just came home today and was telling me that they got their new seat assignments, and it's for a core class, math, I believe. She said there's 34 students in her classroom. So two students don't even have chairs. So my guess is that there's still a lot of classes that are, and so at 166 classes per day, that should be an average of 27 students. And even 20% above that's 32, they're at 34. So again, that's just one example, but I think that there's probably a lot of classes that are way over what the state recommends. So maybe take a closer look at that or provide us with overall numbers. And I understand what you're saying, Dr. Cleveland, that you have another class that's lower than that.
Right.
But when you have some classes that are grossly over, it doesn't really meet the spirit of what the state's asking for.
And I think Renee would probably be able to answer that a little bit better. But what happens at the high schools is it takes them a little while to level the classes out. It happens at the middle school. I was at the middle school for about 15 years. And what happens sometimes is if you have new kids coming in, things like that, and you're trying to get kids into the right electives, so you're ending up putting kids over here in this class. And so sometimes you end up with a lot more kids in, say, this math class. So then we say, oh, we got to open up another section of math so that we can get those numbers leveled out, so that we can get them down to the proper numbers. But then you're looking around and you go, oh, shoot, this one's only got 22 kids in it. So we've got to get some more kids over to this teacher. And I don't know if Renee, if you want to add to that, but as far as I remember at the middle school, because I worked on the scheduling, that's the challenge, is trying to get
I understand the challenge. I'm just
leveled. So
yeah,
it's
across the board, I'm sure.
the problem is from our vantage point, we don't drill down that far at all in my department. What we see is we've given you this many teachers, you have a total of this many kids, and when you divide it, it comes to this many per.
But what I'm saying is the perfect math from your office
Right.
to the application of it in the schools doesn't necessarily work that way. And so for parents that are watching or here, they might be saying what I'm saying. And so just to know that there's a difference between a formula working in your office versus butts and seats in a classroom
No, I think it's a
different.
point well
Yeah,
taken. I
yeah.
agree. I agree. Point well taken, yes.
And then just a final comment, as far as the support that you offer staff. One day we were here and I saw that there was a dossier support group for helping teachers. And I think things like that are outstanding, whether teachers take advantage of it or not. But it's awesome that you guys provide that level of support because teachers are overwhelmed. And so kudos to you guys for doing things like that.
Thank you, because I will tell you that every single teacher last year that took advantage of our dossier coaches passed the dossier first.
Oh, that's good.
The only ones that had to resubmit were the ones who didn't
Mm-hmm.
come to the dossier coach support. And after they didn't pass, they called me up and said, do you have somebody that can help me with the dossier? Every single person, though, in this district passed the dossiers last year.
That is great. I know Dr. Cleveland had a comment.
You're absolutely right. We'll look into that 34. And
Yeah.
see if there's anything we can do about that, because we shouldn't have 34 in a math class. But one of the rules, you're exactly right. One of the rules is no matter how you cut it, when you actually divide up the classes across, it never ends up right. I mean, you just count on it. And so it never distributes perfectly. And the other issue that makes scheduling such a challenge at the secondary level are all the singletons, those one-time courses that are offered during the day that everything else has to kind of rotate around. And we still are struggling a little bit in terms of finding math and science teachers. Still an area we've struggled a little bit in finding, so much better than it was a year or 2 years ago. So again, we're making progress in it, but we'll certainly take a look and see if there's anything we can do for that 34. Hopefully we can get that class evened out. But it's often, the kids, but I'm in band too, and I'm in the second year of Spanish, and I'm in this, and I'm in this. And so the other thing that's just a given in high schools, if you worked in them for a long time, and I did, is move anybody's kid but mine. And so that also enters that they're fine to move.
Please don't
but
move
not my
child
kid.
out of that math class.
Right, because she loves it.
Right now.
So you're not volunteering
I'm
for
not
us to
volunteering.
yeah,
The
okay,
story-
got it.
The number came up for a totally different purpose. She was not complaining about class size. She was just telling me about the seating chart. So please do not move my child out of that math class.
I hear you.
I get it. I hear it really likely.
Get it.
But it isn't as simple as people often think it is. I mean, they just think, well, how could that be so difficult? And there's just, if you've ever worked on a high school schedule, it's a very difficult thing to do.
I'll tell you a story. I started at UNM way back when you used to have to stand in this room and they had these big screens and they'd put classes up and you'd write them down as fast as you could. And you'd run over to the person and hope that you got, and then they'd go, nope, that class is closed. And then you'd have to run back over and try to find another class. And that's kind of how scheduling goes. So.
Yeah, no, that's true. I think we really need to look at it too for our new teachers as they come in, those class sizes, especially when I first started. I teach high school students and I had a class of 30 and I was overwhelmed. And you just feel that you are missing kids. You can't connect with them the way you want to. And now I've taught for a long time. It's not as hard to teach that many, but especially when you first start, it's really hard. So thank you on that. When we're talking about EAs, I was thinking about my mom. My mom was an EA for APS for many years. And as we were talking about those wages, I just how much did she make in the 90s? I just can't even imagine. And she was a teacher in New York, but decided not to receive her full license. And so we do have people who do have backgrounds and degrees a lot of times. And it really is unfortunate that we are not paying more for those, for that position. And she did do special education, and I went into her classroom many times, and they do see some of the hardest things. So we do need to make sure that we can, I'm hoping everything that we can do, that we will continue to do to help our EAs in our district and throughout the state. So any other questions or comments from our board? Okay, thank you so much. That was great. Thank you. Wonderful. Clap. Okay, our next department update will be Special Services and Ancillary and Support Services. Jerry Reeder, our Executive Director of Special Services, will present.
Thank you. President Galbraith, Dr. Cleveland, members of the board. I was asked to share teaching and learning and related services. So what I want to show is how do teaching and learning and related services fit together through our Special Services Department and help all our students district-wide. Now, first of all, the Special Services Department is part of the Curriculum and Instruction Department. So that is our main goal, is to provide curriculum to students. So when Joy Morales and Todd Resch came up and gave you the curriculum piece, I was sitting in my seat going, well, yes, okay, we do that, but then we do add extra service on top of that to meet the students with disabilities needs. The Special Services Department is responsible for all special education students from ages 3 through 21 throughout the district. In the schools, we provide intervention, we work with that curriculum, and then we collaborate with parents and many teams. Our first part of it is our child find requirement. We have a department in special services called the Child Find Department, and they work with 3 and 4-year-olds. We work with those agencies that are birth to 3 that bring in those students. But what people don't realize is we also have a child find requirement from kindergarten through 12th grade. That anytime we discover that there's a student with any disability, that we have to, evaluate them and then eventually serve them. And we evaluate with our educational diagnosticians, our school psychologists, and our speech language pathologists. And those teams work really intently with our school teams. Okay, on the Rio Rancho Public School Strategic Plan, under staff excellence, we have great general ed teachers who work with our students with disabilities, our special education teachers, those education assistants we were talking about earlier, and our ancillary staff. So I'll use ancillary staff and related services interchangeably. It's really that same people. I'm sorry, we're on the, still in there. Under engagement and innovation, we look at that curriculum, and then how do we accommodate and modify that curriculum to meet the students' needs. Under safety and wellness, we have social workers, teachers, psychologists, behavior specialists. They're all working with those teams on the behavior plans. I forgot to mention in there, we also use our Medicaid dollars to pay for nurses, because that's all part of that wellness piece. Many of our students have some kind of nursing plan that they follow in the schools. And then the operational excellence, we have to follow all the state laws, all the federal laws, and then of course everything that's in the board policies. Okay. So special education teaching and learning. This piece I'm going to about read to you, this is from the federal law. It's the purpose of special education and the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act is to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them the free and appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. The Individuals with Disabilities Education Act requires all students with disabilities be provided access to the general education curriculum. The goal of special education is to enable students with disabilities to make progress in that same grade level curriculum as their non-disabled peers. And our teachers work very hard to get that. Sometimes we may have a 9th grader that's only reading on the 3rd grade level. So how do you accommodate and modify that curriculum at that same level that their peers are getting? And so our staff definitely work very hard to do that. So related services is a large definition. It means anywhere from transportation and developmental, corrective, and other support services that are required to assist a child with disability to benefit from special education. So we broke that piece down into 5 areas. Communication. So under that, we have our speech language pathologist, our audiologist services, and our interpreting services. We have behavioral health, and under that is our school social workers. And then they work closely with our school counselors, but then they provide parent counseling and training as well. We have motor therapy. So that's physical and occupational therapy. and also recreational or adaptive PE. And then also orientation and mobility therapists who work with our students with visual impairments. So we have school health services that the school teams and the nurses have to follow that health management plan. And then we have rehabilitation counseling, which are basically like our general ed counselors at the high school level, and they're called transition specialists. Okay, our special education philosophy. So all means all. And I'm only going to share a few of these with you, and really they were Maggie Cordova's favorites. So they were all students are general education first, and special education is a service, not a place. And then I'm going to stop there. The reason I'm trying to rush is my all the other executive directors said if I took too long, they're going to start shooting rubber bands at me. So I'm trying to hurry. Okay, so this next one, special education and general education. You know, in what ways do our general ed and special education teachers work together? You know, they're all provided the same general education professional development, materials and planning to ensure the consistent understanding and that delivery of the general education curriculum. So the special education teacher is responsible for that co-planning with the general education teacher, ensure that their accommodations are provided, and to deliver that specialized instruction. The general ed teacher, their main responsibility is to deliver that curriculum. And, you know, they play a big piece in this because not only that, they are responsible to scaffold that and differentiate that instruction for all our students as well. You know, both teachers bring their skills, perspectives, and trainings. You know, they combine their resources. You know, they work together on daily routines, create lesson plans, and work very hard for our students in the classrooms. So this next piece, specially designed instruction, that's what that law says we're required to do. You know, it's the organize and plan instructional activities by a qualified special education professional that modify as appropriate the content, methodology, or delivery of instruction in an intentional and systematic process that specifically addresses the student's needs expressed in their IEP goals and objectives. Okay, so this next piece, how do we access general education curriculum for students with disabilities? First, in the general education classrooms. So really, the most important part is that last piece. The Rio Rancho Public Schools special ed teachers use the adopted general education curriculum. Other school districts out there sometimes will look at that curriculum and go, we don't want to use that. We're going to do an alternative curriculum for our students with disabilities. So then you have general ed students learning one curriculum and special ed students learning another. And we've always advocated to do the same curriculum. What we do is we try to get extra tools out there. So we have the read and write curriculum for Google Chrome. And so it's that program's an intuitive program where students can either speak into the computer and it'll write it out for them, or if they're typing, it'll sometimes has word prediction and it'll predict a word for them. They can scan in articles, and sometimes that'll make it easier for them to understand. The other tools that we have are really intervention programs. So we have a Spire reading program that we use at elementary, middle, and in our small group classes at high school. But it's, like I mentioned before, we may have a high school student reading at a lower level. And we tried to do what we can at all grade levels to bring them up to speed, or as high as we can get that student within that year. And then at the high school level, we also utilize their Read 180 system. So we had talked about using curriculum. The only time we do use an alternative curriculum is with our students on an alternative pathway. So you heard about students in our curriculum, community-based instruction classrooms. And so it's really for our students that most highest need. So with students like that, we utilize a system called Unique Learning System. And it still tries to take those same grade level content, but it really brings it down to those students' level so that they can understand as well. So this is our continuum of services throughout the district. And we really start at the bottom with general education and we move up. So at the bottom is our least restrictive setting. And then once we move into inclusion, you may think, oh, inclusion is not restrictive. Yes, it's a little bit more restrictive than the student being in a general ed class. Then we have a small group. Then we have separate schools like Desert Pathways or Desert Trails. Also some of our cluster classrooms that are basically small group classrooms that help students with very high behavioral needs. And then the most restrictive is either homebound or home hospital. Okay. All right, next slide. Okay, now at Shining Stars Preschool, we have 30 classrooms, and those classrooms each do 2 sessions a day. Only 3 of those 60 classrooms are small group segregated. So that is a wonderful thing, because if you look at, statewide, nationwide, you'll see a lot of restrictive classrooms where they only serve students with disabilities in one classroom. They will be adding one small group classroom right now in January. They had an influx of students that are medically fragile. So, and as they start, we talked about those 3 and 4-year-olds that get evaluated throughout the school year. So as we start with the general ed population of about 60% and special ed at 40. And then during the year, our special ed program or number of students increases. So we end the year around 60% special ed and 40% general ed. They work on a school-wide core vocabulary, zones of regulation. They also have students who walk in for speech services. At the preschool through kindergarten level, we have 2 state schools that serve children. It's New Mexico School for the blind and visually impaired, and New Mexico School for the deaf. These are interesting programs because they are choice programs. So they can choose whether they want to go to New Mexico School for the blind and visually impaired or Shining Stars. And we've tried to duplicate these classrooms and serve students here because New Mexico School for the Blind is way up on Wantabo and Central, and it's very, an hour of transportation that way, an hour back, yet parents still choose to send their children there for various reasons. But many parents do choose to stay with us. All right, under our elementary special education continuum service, we always start off at general education. And then I have an acronym here, it's called READ. And it's basically a dual certified teacher that half general ed, half special ed. So they're dual certified in those. But I don't know what READ stands for. We've just used it so long. I tell everybody, oh, it's just the first 4 letters of my last name. The only thing we used to have 2 programs a long time ago. There was SEED and READ. So SEED was special ed, early development, and all I can think of is READ was maybe regular ed, early development, but it's still, that's basically an inclusion class. Next is we just have our regular inclusion, 1 special ed teacher and 1 general ed teacher, then resource room, and then we have small groups. And then we have our cluster classrooms at Cielo Azul, Maggie Cordova, Rio Rancho Elementary for our social communication. And mostly that's a lot of our students with autism. But it's not only, if we ever have a student with that need that it does not have the eligibility of autism, we will also serve that student in there. And then Maggie Cordova also has our social skills classroom. And social skills, those are those intense behaviors that they can't handle in the regular classroom. Colinas del Norte serves our medically fragile classrooms at the elementary level, and then Desert Sunrise is our district program for students with those behavioral needs. Okay, at the middle school level, again, we started at general ed, then inclusion, small group. Then we have only one cluster program for the social communication skills class at Mountain View Middle School. And then Desert Trails is, again, our social skills district program at the Rio Rancho Middle School campus. Okay, at the high school level, general education, inclusion, small group, cross-categorical, and then you haven't seen community-based instruction at the lower levels, because really when we look at community-based instruction, we don't start teaching those skills for independent living until that level. We also, our 18 to 21-year-old programs, we have one at each high school. At Cleveland, it's Bolt, and at Rio Rancho High School, it's STEP. And really those students have gone through their 4 years of high school and met all the credits, but they're still not ready to move on into an independent situation in their life, so we continue to serve them. And then another 18 to 21 year program we have is Project Search, and that's at Russ Russ Presbyterian Hospital. And really, it's those, we have students that come from either Bolt or STEP that learn those skills, and they do 3 rotations at Rust. So we get them into an independent work situation to help them move on to that next level. We have a communication social skills classroom at Rio Rancho High School, and then Desert Pathways that is next to Eagle Ridge Middle School. Okay, next we have our special services consultants. And one is a special education instructional coordinator, and she's housed in the CNI department and works with all of their coordinators, but she focuses primarily on special education. We have 3 behavior specialists that go into any of our classrooms, general ed or special ed, to help those teachers in any difficult situations with behavior. We have an itinerant teacher of the visually impaired, and working with her, we have our Braille transcriptionist and graphic media specialist. We also have a teacher of the deaf and hard of hearing that works with all of our schools, and our assistive technology staff. Our assistive technology staff helps students with basically any type of communication need that they have. Again, that's preschool through 12th grade. Okay, related services in the classroom. They're designed to support students with disabilities in order to benefit from the special education services. So we have those services of really the teacher and SLPs are really the only 2 that can provide services, but then all the others are there to support them. And then, again, that federal word, the free appropriate public education. So that means every school system has a duty to serve students with disabilities. Okay. Audiology is a related service. The audiologists do evaluations and measure middle ear function. They interpret hearing loss and its impact on the education. They make minor repairs on these students' hearing aids, and also we have a speaker system in many, if the majority of our classrooms throughout the district. It's an FM system. Some are built in and some are portable. They also are an integral part of our Child Find team and help evaluate students when they are going through that process for special education. All right, the next one is our adaptive physical education as a related service. They provide specialized instruction with a focus on physical fitness, sports, and motor skills. What they do is they really help integrate those students with special needs into a typical PE class by modifying those activities and games that they do. Our occupational therapists, they really focus on those fine motor skills. as opposed to our, on the next screen, as our physical therapists, that they do those whole body pieces. But the physical therapist job is really to help a student access their entire environment, to get through the school, to make it through the school, and also to get to their classrooms and to navigate all of that area. Our school social workers, they work on social emotional skills with students in the classrooms. They enhance the emotional well-being in order to promote that academic improvement of our students. They work on skills like self-esteem and social skills. And they work very closely with our school counselors. And then our speech language pathologists, they assess, diagnose, and treat speech and social communication language disorders. Okay, next on new this year. Our department has been working really hard in professional development, and our goal this year is a collaborative goal writing. So we had all of our special ed instructional leaders and all of our related services come to a professional development, and we're using a train the trainer model. They're going to go back and train together all these special ed teachers just to ensure that our IEPs are top notch. Okay. We've increased the number of district employed related services providers as a result of that competitive pay that we were able to do this year. So that we didn't increase, what we did was we decreased contractors. We also have 2 SLPs that are doing all the evaluations district-wide to ensure consistency and ensure that we get to all our speech evaluations in a timely manner. And then we have SLP lead and a social worker lead that are working with all those new employees in their orientation training and support. Yeah. And we're also looking at a new tool for our social workers in their assessments of students with behavioral needs. Okay, some of the highlights in our district. We reached out to the schools and they kind of told us some of the good things that are going on. Unfortunately, we didn't hear back from all the schools, but Joe Harris, they have a peer mentoring program that partners peers with students with disabilities. They have what they call the Retriever Breather sensory room. And then they have voluntary morning workout groups. This has helped with significant reduction in off-task behavior and increase the student focus and attention throughout their day. Maggie Cordova, one of our occupational therapists, her name's Kristen McDermott. She created a sensory path. Several of our schools have sensory paths. If you walk down some of the hallways, you'll see these neat little areas, and they'll tell the student to stop and maybe spin around or jump or hop. And they're very neat, and they help students regulate. Okay, Rio Rancho Elementary School, they are an ESPN top 5 unified champion. So we've been working with Special Olympics for several years on unified sports. So unified sports is teaming together students with severe disabilities and general ed students to play in many different sports. One of them is basketball. So our next one is our Lincoln Middle School. They are also a unified champion school. Not quite ESPN top 5 yet, but I'm sure they're working on it. So I had about a month ago, I was invited to Lincoln Middle School, and they were playing their unified team against Rio Rancho Middle School's unified team. Lincoln had their entire student body there, and they were cheering on the students from both schools. No booing, no nothing. It was an excellent, wonderful opportunity. One of the things many of our schools are doing is they're involved in the zones of regulation. The students kind of learn what these zones are, And, it's basically a self-awareness. So as we, I put in a little thing to let you guys know what they are. Didn't make it on there. Blue is sad, bored, tired, and sick. Green is calm, happy, focused. Red is out of control, anger, rage, terror. And yellow is excited, silly, frustrated, nervous, and hyper. So teachers are working with students so they can say, Jerry, what zone are you in right now? So I'm probably in my yellow zone because I'm presenting to you guys. I'm a little escalated, excited, hyper. So, but it's really neat when students can identify what their needs are. On the next screen, our project search. We are with our 7th cohort at Russ Presbyterian Medical Center. And the neat thing about that is if you look on the bottom, we work with these 5 other agencies, including ourselves, in collaborating to make this happen. So we work with Russ Presbyterian as our host site, then us, then New Mexico Department of Health, the UNM Center for Developmental Disabilities, Department of Vocational Rehabilitation, and Adelante. They're helping us create this awesome program for our district. Okay, our next one is our challenges. Staffing shortages. We are doing much better than we have in past, but in working with one of our schools today, Rancho High School, they had 4 staff quit since winter break, 2 teachers and 2 education assistants. So they're scrambling, to get staff back in. But really where we have those staffing shortages are in those low incidence classes, and those are our highest need classrooms. Our related service providers have the highest caseload numbers that they've had in a long time. All our staff and students are struggling with social emotional concerns, and transfer of students with disabilities from neighboring districts and from outside the state. So special ed is about 12% nationally. We're about 14% statewide. Rio Rancho Public Schools is currently at 19.5% special education. I don't know how many phone calls I get a year where parents tell me, we're moving in from Virginia and we hear you're have the best special education programs. So we would like to come there. And by the way, our child has autism and it's very severe, and we need your services. So every day I hear from schools, we have X many kids moving in from neighboring districts, and with open enrollment, these students that sit on the border that have special needs, come into our district through open enrollment. So, our number, is it artificially high because of all that? Probably. Okay. Opportunities for improvement. Continue with our professional development in many areas, training on IDEA, behavior management, specialized instruction. That retention and recruitment of highly qualified staff is always a must. Our evaluation timelines, the legislature, or I should say the special ed department, is currently working on changing the NMAC. They're speeding up those timelines for evaluation. We were already struggling with evaluation, so once they change that, which is coming up right here in the next few months, we are going to fall very behind and be in the be scrambling to evaluate our students. And then the last thing is supporting our general education staff to build a deeper understanding of special education. And that is all I have for you today. What I want to say is I know I hit every area very quickly. If there's some area you want me to come back and bring a team, please let Dr. Cleveland know, and we'll be happy to do another presentation for you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jerry. You know, I think as you say, you hit a lot. There was a lot there, and you hit it quickly. That there is a lot that sits right under this what we're talking about today. So thank you so much for taking time to go through each and every one of those. Dr. Cleveland, did you want to add anything before I go to questions?
Just a comment on the high percentage. It actually has attracted the state's attention a couple of times, whether or not we were over-identifying kids.
Mhm.
And they came in and took a look and said, no, there was no indication we were over-identifying at all. But we've actually had them take a look at that because it is high. It is, and with that high percentage are increased costs, and sometimes very significant costs. And so we want to continue to work with the state to do a better job of funding those highest need kids in our state, because they are not fully funded, not even close to being funded. And we welcome all children. I mean, that's we have always had a philosophy of welcoming all children, but we do need for the state to take a look at some of the high need students. We had that conversation a couple of months ago with LFC, and whether there would be a way to identify the highest need kids and provide not only additional funding, but additional support for teachers who would be willing to work with some of our highest need kids. And he seemed open to that. It's just hard to specify what qualifies for that. How would you identify a teacher that would qualify for that versus a teacher who might not? But it is a very high percentage, way above national, way insignificantly above state. And so I guess sometimes Jerry and his staff may feel that they're almost the victims of their own success, because and yet parents talk a lot. And they know where good programs are for their children, and they seek them out and they find them. And you have to admire the parent cares enough to do that. And so, but it does present a lot of challenges. And it's just hard sometimes to find the staffing to meet the needs of all of these kids. So it's a challenge that no other department has in our district. It's quite the same in terms of the students that they serve.
Thank you. Jessica Tyler, do you have any questions or comments? I'm going the opposite.
you.
So
Thank you.
Noreen Scott.
No, I don't have any questions. Thank you for a good report.
Okay. And Gary Tripp.
Jerry, one of the things the New Mexico School Boards Association and even this board is asking the legislators for is to take a look at special education assistants having a higher salary than a regular education assistant. And I think what we could use when we go lobby is, what are some of those differences? What are some of those justifications of what a special education assistant does, and why we need to fulfill this shortage? And I think it's not only the classroom, but it's also the bus assistant, because I know that the bus drivers that have special education assistants on those buses are in need of assistance. So if you could help us with that, that would be greatly appreciated. And
Willing to help, yeah.
and if you can, I just like to thank all the teachers and all the special education teachers, the assistants. I know it's a rewarding life, but it's also a challenging life, and we're a success of our own story, like Dr. Clemens said. But thank him for all they do, and thank your department. It was good report. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Let me just make one quick comment. You're exactly right. We've talked about educational assistants, and I would just add that it really probably needs to apply to teachers as well. And we mentioned that earlier. The job is different. It is a different job. And so it's been very interesting, the discussion across the state. Many of our superintendents don't support a differentiated salary schedule for special education until you start talking to them about the severity of it. And so, I think what everyone's in agreement is more severe needs should warrant greater compensation in some way, however that ought to look. So for both the educational assistant, but also for the teacher, many of our teachers who are certified to teach special education do not do it. And they leave that field and go back into regular education because it's sometimes not as hard and as challenging. And in some cases, you don't have to deal with even issues of of dealing with the potential of being injured at times. So we really do need to think about those, both educational assistants and teachers who work with our highest need kids, and somehow compensate them for that increased workload and responsibility. And I think what we got back from LFC was they were open to that, not to all special education teachers, because an inclusion teacher's job is somewhat similar to a regular teacher's class when they're working together. But in some of the programs where we're dealing with really severe social, emotional, psychological needs or whatever, it is a different job altogether. It really is a different job. So
Okay.
we hope we make some progress this session on that particular issue.
Yeah. And Jeff Morgan.
No questions. Good work. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I echo what Gary says, just thank you to you and to everyone in those departments, and to what Dr. Cleveland was saying, as I was talking about my mom, I would sit in her classroom. That's a young person. And I mean, she was dealing with feeding tubes and all sorts of things. And that's a difficult position to be in. So anyway, but thank you so much for a good, thorough presentation. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks.
Okay. We're clapping too. Whew, it helps
I
us.
want to add, at least they just threatened you with rubber bands versus spitballs. They're keeping it clean.
That's true. It's true. I was going to say something after he said that, and I was like, no. All right. We'll now go to approve our consent agenda. Any questions on the consent before we approve?
Madam President, this is Board Member Tyler. I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, a second. Thanks.
Okay. We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0 on that. Okay, we'll now go into our business portion of our meeting for the evening. We'll start with item A, which is an update and status of the Spark Academy for academic year 2023-2024. Janice Chanel, our elementary school improvement officer, will present to us tonight.
Good evening. I don't know if I'm in the yellow zone, but I'm here.
I was going to ask you actually which zone you were in.
I remember all the other colors. So good evening and Happy New Year, President Galbraith, members of the board, and Dr. Cleveland. As I was preparing for this and thinking about what's going to be shared, I thought, when we talked to Dr. Cleveland about this, I don't know if you want to vote tonight or if you decide that you want to table that, but I know you're going to get information that you might just want to process. And so I just want to say that, we completely understand that. And what's important about this is we're now in the budget season. So thank you for letting us come back and talk to you during the budget season. And there are a lot of priorities, as Board Member Tripp referred to, that have to be considered for the budget. So we just want to share the most factual information with you as we can. And then whether or not you choose to vote will be completely up to you, of course. But I can't imagine, that being an easy decision either way. So we can go to back to the other slide, I think. Is there one missing? Okay, that's right. And so just really the objective of this is you had asked for a fiscal update, enrollment, recruiting efforts, and successes and challenges. So that's what we're going to share with you this evening, or what I'll share with you. We do have finance here if you have any further finance questions, and they can answer those for you besides what's in here, as well as I'm going to mention something with the fine arts staff that's shared between the two schools, and Kurt Schmidt has been part of that conversation if you have any more questions about that. So for those of you who aren't aware, it's a hybrid model for our K-5 students. Close collaboration with parents and guardians. 4 days a week are Google Meets, and then every Thursday currently the students are coming in for a full day of instruction. When they are in person, they participate in their related arts in person with the teachers. And when they also get that FaceTime with the teacher, they do recess, they do lunch, just as if they were there. And then they participate in community and family events. And Ms. Aker, Principal Aker, does a great job of reaching out and having the community participate. They also participated in extended learning with the rest of the schools, which, it's a little bit of a challenge when you think about it being a virtual school, but they came up with 4 different opportunities for kids: art club, movement club, Legos, and literacy, and 2 after-school tutoring groups. And so I do want to credit the school with, whenever there's an opportunity, they're always on board to be involved. Even if the students are virtual, the majority of the time, they're engaging kids. There have been many efforts to promote the school, and you can see, I don't have to read all of those to you, but you can see what they've done. And I know that it's been shared by parents, it's been shared by teachers, by Mrs. Aker herself, and other people that have been on social media. So the recruiting efforts are there. And as you heard one of the public speakers refer to, they want to keep expanding. At this point, the enrollment is down 55% from last year. I know that was kind of one of the questions we had last year. We weren't quite sure what the enrollment would be. And we have the data to show, where those students went. Most of them, the majority of them, returned to their Rancho public homeschool. And then we lost a significant group of 5th graders that went to middle school, and 25 students left Rio Rancho. This year, it's been kind of a wash. We had students return to their homeschool and almost the exact same number come into Spark. So it didn't increase enrollment, but it did replace the kids who went back to their homeschool. And you can see the class sizes, and I appreciate the question, for the other elementary schools. You can see that they have manageable class sizes. I do want to credit the kinder 1st grade teacher because she's doing both, which is a huge challenge with Common Core. And Ms. Aker says she doesn't take the prep time that she needs, but she's teaching both grade levels. And then when they come in person, there is an educational assistant that supports. So if she's working with one grade level, the educational assistant helps with the other grade level. You have a great demographic here that shows you where the students are coming from and the breakdown of socioeconomic and their needs. It's pretty reflective of the district. I do want you to notice the special education population is 16%. That's pretty significant for a virtual school, and it's one teacher that services all of those students. So that's a little bit of a challenge doing K-5. For the students who didn't return, 78% went back to our own school. So I know that was a question that was asked, and we shared that before. And then you can see where the other students went. About 3% chose a different online school. Mrs. Aker sent out some surveys and got some feedback for you so that you could see, what the parents and students are saying about Spark. And as you can see from the turnout here and the comments that you got, about 25% of the parents reached out to you guys to let you know their support for the school. We initially started Spark because of the health concerns, and you can still see that is still a concern for some parents. We keep having this wave of COVID come back, and so parents are still seeing that as a concern as to why they're keeping their kids in the virtual model. And what made them return, you can see that as well. Okay, we're moving. That's okay, you're good. I want to reference, we did talk about it being innovative, and that has always been the plan with Spark. The goal was to always to grow it and to always be innovative. That we've never lost that, and I think that's reflective in what you've heard here tonight and what the parents have said and what you've seen. The real struggle is growing that population and making it fiscally equitable to the other schools. That's been the challenge for us. Some comments from students. I know that Beth's department went and interviewed some kids at home, and so they got to share those videos on social media. I don't know if you saw them, but what some of the kids had to say. When they're there, you can see they're very excited about being in person. And then you have the teacher comments. And we did hear that comment tonight from the parents too about building those digital skills. Originally, when we looked at the student data I remember sharing one of the slides, and it looked like our 3rd graders in this school took a huge dip, and it was very concerning. So Happy Miller looked into that for me and found it was a very small percentage. It was just a couple of kids that had tested. It wasn't the whole grade level. So that was refreshing after we looked at it, because when you see the data, it's pretty closely aligned with how the district is doing. So when you look at NWA, which is the assessment that we take, our benchmark assessment, you can see they're pretty closely aligned with how the students are doing that are coming in person. I think it's important to know those assessments, when they take these, they're in person, they're not at home. So the parents aren't helping them when they're taking the assessment. And then iStation is our early primary students. Well, we do K through 3 here, and you can see how they're doing in iStation compared to the rest of the district. And then finally, you have the state assessment on there, so you can see their comparison, which the math is a little different than it is in the other assessment, in the NWA assessment, but still pretty close to how the students are doing. When you look at the staffing slide, this is where it gets complicated. And when we talk about the budget in meeting with finance, the budget is based only on operational. It doesn't consider any other funding source in there. So it's based on this staffing, what that we have here. So the principal, there's one special education teacher. The educational assistant also helps in the office sometimes if that's needed, so she can play both roles. They have a half-time instructional coach, half-time reading intervention, half-time ed tech, and one clerical. These are all these are pure Spark allocations. I'll share with you in a little bit the staffing that's shared with Joe Harris and some of the push and pull that's happened with that. That's been a little difficult and challenging. If you look at the total operational cost for Spark, it's almost $1 million for the cost for the total funding of the school. From last year, you can see they had an increase of 121%, and that's just because the number of students dropped. And then we wanted to share with you, the 11.8 is pretty close to what the raises were last year, so that's why you see an 11.8 increase for the rest of the schools, the elementary schools, for their cost. I want to clarify one thing. Staff cost about $100,000. The overall operational is almost $1 million. So I know there was a question last time, if let's say all 80 students don't return to Spark, they leave our district, we would still be ahead of $500,000. The student generate is almost $500,000. I'm going to get this right, I promise. Students generate almost $500,000. We spend $1 million. Some of the challenges that we're facing when looking at the school, you've heard the needs from what's happening across the district. So that's not unique to, Spark has the same exact concerns with students, with needs for students and making sure the needs are being met. Trying to increase the enrollment. We know that Joe Harris is going to grow. They've grown about 80 students this year. So we know that that's going to continue if you've seen in the building, any of the building that's happening over there. And the physical space, if we want to continue to grow Spark, we want there to be a commitment that there is going to be a physical space for Spark in the future. And it's not going to have to be attached to a school, especially if it's going to grow, because our elementary schools won't be able to sustain a larger population at Spark. The per pupil expenditure for Spark this year was based on last year's budget on the 224 students. Next year, it would be based on the number of students they have this year. So they'll see a significant decrease in the allocations per pupil, even if the school does grow. So that could be a challenge. Professional development, particularly for teaching virtually and teaching students digitally. We are able, through ELTP, we're sending Mrs. Aker and a staff member to a virtual learning training. And that's one of the great things about ELTP is we can do that. The shared staff has been a real struggle. And we brought this up last year, but it's really been difficult this year. Especially with the related arts. So music, art, PE are all shared. During the summer, one of the related arts teachers created several schedules to try to figure all of that out and make it work. At this time, most elementary schools, because they have 6 grade levels, an art teacher would have 6 classes a day. At Joe Harris, they have 7. They see the Spark students in the morning, and then they have every other grade level in the afternoon. Curriculum-wise, it's become a challenge because when they're in person, they have them full-time, but when they're online, they don't have them the full 45 minutes or 50 minutes. So they're at different paces. So the virtual students are not at the same place in the curriculum for art, music, or PE. So now the teachers are having to do 2 sets of lessons and teach virtually and teach in person. So if the school is to continue, then we'd request either funding that they have their own teachers, which doesn't really seem fiscally like it would work, or funding to purchase online programs for art, music, and PE. similar to what cyber has, just because it's not manageable for the staff at Joe Harris to be doing both, especially with their school growing. It's been very difficult. And I appreciate Kurt Schmidt helping with that. In asking, Joe Harris, what are some of their concerns? It's definitely the growth. It's even as down to furniture needs, sometimes can be a little complicated. There is space. It's not that there isn't space right now. It's just how long will that last, and will we be able to build something? Because I think if we want to continue this, we want to continue to do it really well and commit to it. The scheduling we talked about, there was a traffic issue that I think has been worked out initially when the students started coming on Thursdays. So you had some going to cyber and some coming to Joe Harris, and it was a little complicated. So now the Spark students come earlier so they can be in before the Joe Harris students come. But I think sometimes there's still, some hiccups, but it's definitely better. They figured that out pretty quickly. And so that's kind of a summary of really where we are with the main concerns. It really comes down to shared staffing and space and what the vision is for the program in the future. And as the board, what you guys would like to see for Spark. And so I and all of my support team in the back stand for your question.
Okay. Thank you so much for
You're
the
welcome.
report. One of the reasons that we asked for this at this time, and I know Jana kind of hit it, is that we wanted to make sure that whatever happens is that our parents have time and our staff have time to make plans for that. And so that's why we wanted to make sure we saw it earlier than we saw it last time. So with that, before we go into questions, Dr. Cleveland, would you like to add anything? And I'm sure we'll go back and forth. Okay.
Ask questions first. And the one thing that I did share earlier, though, is that we don't know what the budget looks like yet. And so in the first run of the budget, it looked like we're going to lose money and lose some significant dollars. We have been working really hard with the secretary and with the Legislative Education Study Committee and the Legislative Education Study Committee to try to deal with the issue in terms of abandoning ELTP and sending all of the money through the formula. And as you know, when you send money through the formula, Rancho will get just about the least of it. It's just the way that formula works. So, but they've been alerted early, and I would have to tell you, they've been very responsive to the concerns that we've raised. We are not the only district. Las Cruces was an ELTP K-12 plus district, as was Gadsden, and so they're facing some of the same challenges. So right now they're working on it, but we don't know yet until the session gets underway whether they're going to be able to find a remedy for it. I'm hopeful that they are, that they will support us and reward us for having done what they asked us to do a couple of years ago. My point in saying all that is the budget is an unknown right now. And so that's another thing that makes this even more difficult, is we don't know the money that we're going to even have as a district next year. And not normally, every other year, it's a 30-day and then a 60-day. This year, unfortunately, it's a 60-day session. So in a 60-day session, if history is the same as it's been most years, a 60-day session, we won't know that money, that actual dollar for the district, until around April the 1st. And we will get that at the spring budget conference. So the good news is there's a little time for them to continue work on the challenges. The bad news is it's really late in April to find out exactly what your budget is going to look like. So the secretary did indicate that trying to work with the legislature, they're trying to push the educational budget earlier in the session. And as you know how that works, earlier in the session, it gets through, the governor has 5 days to say yes or no. And that's a good thing, because if she says no, you go back and make some changes, and you can make some modifications and hopefully get a yes. If it goes up at the last minute, which it normally does, then she has 30 days to sign it. And usually it's at the very end of those 30 days before she signs off. So that's just another one of the big unknowns that we just have, is we don't know what our budget is going to look like. And that is always a factor in so many things, unfortunately, that we have to decide. But as we said earlier, This is something, if you know, we'll answer any questions if you want to make a decision now. If you don't, and you want to wait and you want to think about it, you want to look at what the budget begins to really look like, then there's some time to do that, because we're not in a terrible rush beyond the fact of wanting to let people know early, whichever way, whatever decision the board is going to make.
Okay, so real quick question as far as space. We are looking for a new building for cyber, or, you know, we're hoping to build a new building for our middle school and high school cyber. Is that a potential building that we could use for this program in the future?
We have looked at the possibility, and there are several of them, and they have been very successful. Looking at a K-12 program, it would be in separate buildings. You know, you wouldn't put all the, but you could certainly build a K through 12 cyber option for students who wanted that kind of a program. As you know, our cyber program has been very successful over the years. It's done really well, and that would be an option. As you know, we always talk about, though, it's going to cost more money. And it's going to be a considerable increase in expense. So we need, you know, to always keep in mind, Mike Baker's always on us about that. But every time we add a building, every time we add a program, there's additional costs. And a lot of that will depend on what that looks like in terms of our budget next year.
Okay. All right. I'll go to Noreen Scott. Do you have questions? And
Jenna, if money were no object, would you say that this program should continue?
Board Member Scott, yes, but with some adjustments. I would definitely adjust things.
What would you adjust?
The related arts piece, for sure. And we've always talked about having them come in more than one day. So they would start coming in, you know, at least 2 days a week. That was kind of the plan that they originated with. And I really think if we're going to do it, it really should be a K-12 model. Renee and I have talked about looking at what middle school would look like, and could it look more like Spark does? Do we stick with Edgenuity? So I think if money wasn't an option, it's a great choice for families. Where it gets, you know, we see it with Montessori, where it gets tricky is complying with everything that the state wants when you have a very different model. You know, you're limited in how much in-person direct instruction you're going to have, but yet you're accountable to all of that. I guess the most disappointing part is that we really wanted to serve any kid who wanted to come. And in reality, this isn't built for that. We have students that we can't serve because their needs are too great, or they can't travel to the school because it requires transportation. So if I could change it any way, we would want to make it where, you know, any kid who wanted to come could come. And when you have it be where only some can come and not all can come, that's difficult, I think, because we want to be open to all students.
I'm familiar with a private school program in Albuquerque that's similar to this. And they go to school 2 days a week, and then 3 days a week are basically homeschooled. Don't have the benefit of the cyber piece that we offer here. Do you have parents who have come from those kinds of programs want this program, and how does it affect students' learning?
Board Member Scott, I think what you find typically with online programs, parents want a lot of flexibility, what they do with the program. And sometimes that can mean traveling whenever they want or not coming in person. So when it's more of an expectation to come in person, I think not everybody who was there always wants to stay, because a lot of people who want to be online want to be online a lot more, so they have more flexibility. One thing to consider when we talked about special education, if we have a student in a classroom with an adult next to them all day, that is the most restrictive setting that we could provide for a child. And that is what we're asking parents to do at home for their children. It really is a pretty restrictive environment for their learning. Somebody has to be there with them in order to promote that learning. And that really, and our goal is independent learning, and you want kids to be able to do more and more of that. So I think as they get older in the virtual model, they can do that. I don't know. I think you have families that attend this program that offer that level of support for kids when they need it. And so they are successful comparatively. And I mentioned this last time, if you look at the national research, kids learning virtually, they're not achieving as well, typically, if it's just any child, right? So you have to have the right people in this program. And I think that's why it's hard to grow, because you can't just take any child. Even though you want to, they won't be successful because there's limitations. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but
you did. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Okay, Jessica Tyler.
By the way, Mike Baker won't give me all the money I want. And I want that in the minutes.
Story of our lives.
I tried.
Do we know the current enrollment of Joe Harris Elementary School?
Board member trip, I believe the last time I looked, they were about 530, close to 540.
I think we have their principal here. I don't know if he remembers off the top.
I think it's a little less than that. I think about
525.
About.
I feel like I'm on Price is Right. 525.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
Do we have a projected enrollment? Is the school going to be at capacity? Is it currently at capacity? Will it be at capacity by next year?
How many
think we can
did
get
you
up to
grow
100.
this year at Joe Harris? What was your increase of students in your program, Trent? Do you know?
We were at about 450 last year.
So about 100.
So you grew about 100 children this year. Okay.
And what right now currently is built for how many students?
800?
Yeah, 800.
800. Okay. So I just feel like I got a lot of questions, Jenna, but I can maybe send my notes. But one of the things that, because the parents I hear, I did jot some things down, and I think the state of New Mexico, I think its school district's going to have more money to work with. But I don't know if that's going to be enough money to make up a 1.9 million transportation that we're going to have to put into the transportation budget. I don't know how short the state's going to treat us as far as instructional materials. I don't know, and I like to evaluate for myself how fair and equitable it is to all the staff of Rio Rancho High School. If second grade has 12 and a Cielo Azul second grade teacher has 24. So I those are things I'm playing with in my mind. And then one thing that always has played in my mind is Sandia Vista has a Montessori program, and I live in that district. And most of the kids I know because they live in my neighborhood. So I wonder about the opportunity in the north side of Rio Rancho that kids are getting to go to Spark Academy because they have to transport themselves. Just like I don't know if there's an opportunity for the south side of Rio Rancho for those kids that parents want them to go to Montessori, but they can't because they have work conditions and so forth. So those are my big hangups, and I just want to throw them out there because I don't want to not be transparent as I look at this and some other things. I think we're going to have more money. I just don't know if they're going to give us enough money to make up the transportation and instructional materials and all the other things we need for all our kids in the district. So the other thing I didn't know it was a 1-day program. I just learned that tonight. I thought it was 2 days, maybe 2.5 days. So I wrote down, I think it was a great report. I think the parents did a great job with their comments, but there's a lot of evaluation. But I just wanted to throw out there some of my hang-ups. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Jeff Morgan.
No questions at this time. Thanks.
Okay. Dr. Cleveland, do you want to respond?
Did you
to
have any
anything?
more you wanted to ask first?
No, not right now.
Okay.
Anyone else?
On the first run, and I agree with Mr. Tripp, board member Tripp, I think we will see some additional funding coming in. I want to be sure the board understands what has transpired. That when we went and did ELTP, they gave us $13 million to do it. And so that helped us with the raises. It helped us with full staffing. It allowed us to keep the special programs that we had put in for kids, and they were wonderful programs. And I think that's, it was somewhat hard for staff And in some cases, parents, when we actually put it out, we have to do away with these things.
And that's
They didn't
extended
want to do
learning.
that.
I just want to add to that. That's extended learning that Dr. Cleveland's talking about. I just wanted to explain to our parents that,
Okay.
that you're talking about extended
All
learning.
right, yeah, something different. And so we went ahead and did it. Now, everybody in the state is going to have to do this. The state has decided, which is what we thought was going to happen anyway. We're now going to the longer school year statewide. So we did it 1 year earlier, but we got significant increase in funding. It gave our teachers a $3,000 salary increase on top of the other increase, and it helped us balance our budget. So now, when they took all the new money, they're going to get rid of the LTP. It's going to be gone. It's now gone. That program is going to be gone. And they took all of the money that they had that they're going to put into the new, what everybody's going to do, the longer school year, and they ran it through the formula. And when they ran it through the formula, the first run through, Gary, we were 3 million short, right there. So we alerted the state to that, and they are working on trying to remedy it, because what really happened is we stepped forward and did what they asked. In fact, they specifically asked our district to do that. And I think in their mind, they just thought this should be enough money. But what they forget is that's how we're 1 million short, is they ran the instructional materials through the formula. And every time they run it through the formula, and we're not the only ones there, it works the same for Hobbs. Some years it's worked the same for Farmington. It has for any of us on the bottom. The formula does not address the issue of fixed cost. And so, a lot of states who have differentiated SEG or budget formulas, they fund the base costs first. So they pay for your insurance, they give you a foundation, and they pay for the fixed costs. So that's your insurance and liability. It's your salaries that they mandate. It is all of the things that you have no say over. And then when that is done, they differentiate above that line for highest need districts. But in New Mexico, we don't do that. In New Mexico, we just run every single thing through the formula. So when they did that this year, we're 3 million short to start. They said they're going to fix that. And I am really optimistic they're going to fix it. And they have said, Board Member Tripp, that they absolutely are going to fix that instructional materials this year. And what they're going to do, we've heard that before. What they're going to do is they're still going to run it through the formula. And then they're going to put some additional money below the line for the districts that didn't get enough. This year, we were 1 million short. Many districts throughout the state got all their instructional material paid for. We were short $1 million, nor did we didn't buy the most expensive materials. We didn't. We bought kind of middle of the road. So they've got some problems. We're 2 million short in transportation. There are other districts in the state that get every penny of their transportation paid for. And so they're trying, I will really give the state credit. They're trying really hard this year to fix some of those problems. And I really haven't felt in the past there's been a commitment to fix it. And right now I have a feeling they're really, from what they've been showing us, I think they're really trying. I wish I could tell the board tonight what our budget would look like next year. When we get our money for instructional materials, well, that's $1 million back in. Yeah. But as Mike has emphasized over and over and over, another thing the board has got to keep in mind is that our budget the last 2 or 3 years has been balanced on vacancy savings. We have almost all of our classrooms filled now. We're not going to have that money again. So that's the other big unknown is if they give us additional money, it's got to be enough to cover the savings that we have lost by having a teacher in every classroom, which is what we needed to do. And we worked hard to do it. That was the direction the board gave us to get that done. But that's another factor in the budget that we are having to deal with next year. So I wish I had that magic ball and, I could tell you exactly what the budget's going to look like, but we can't. So vacancy savings, what they do with ELTP, whether we get our instructional material money paid for next year, whether they finally give us some help with transportation. We're 2 million short in transportation, and there are districts that get every single transportation bill paid. So if they can get those issues addressed, that's 3 million back in our budget. That might offset our vacancy savings. Mike, do you know how much that would be? We need to offset vacancy savings?
Well, our cash carry, in this current year is about 16 million.
Yeah.
Next year, I don't know, it could be 12 million.
Okay. So there's just a lot we don't know at this point, and I think that's really the point I wanted you all to be aware of. Is there's just so many things right now we really don't know the answers to, and we'll influence that. The other issue that's been alluded to, and just certainly, the issue across the district of basically spending equitably for all children across the district. And that's another thing we have to look at as well.
Yeah. I know Jessica Tyler has a question.
Yeah, I have, I guess, a comment. I mean, last year when this was brought to us, I think that my feeling is to be fiscally responsible and to have equitable spending for all children, that I felt the board should have to make the hard decision to close Spark Academy. But we didn't do that because of the timeliness of the issue being brought to us. I thought that it should have been brought to us much earlier, which is why we asked for this report now. So I'm not sure really from my perspective how much the budget will play into it come April, because we're still going to likely be short. There's still always the unknowns, even after the initial budget is conducted. We still won't know our enrollment numbers for sure. And to me, this is a nice to have versus a need to have. And, I think it would be great if we could work towards having a program that's K through 12 in the future, but currently we're not set up for it. We don't have a place for it. We don't have staffing for it. And we don't have proper curriculum for it. We don't have sufficient transportation to make it work for the hybrid model. And so for my personal opinion, I'm ready to make a decision tonight. I don't know what the rest of the board feels like, but those are my comments for now.
Thank you. Go ahead, Noreen.
I think I differ on that. I would like to see what the budget provides, because I think children all learn differently. And my fear is that we wouldn't be offering those students an alternative. And I don't know, I just worry about that. I hear what you're saying about the equitable approach, but I guess I'd like to put the decision off for the reasons Dr. Cleveland discussed. We don't know what the budget is. We don't know if there's going to be any ability to do special programs. And that's just my thought.
Okay. Gary, when you were talking, it seemed you were kind of thinking towards Noreen's thought as waiting a little bit, or am I getting your thoughts mixed up?
Actually, I could go either way. I was leaning towards more of what Jessica was saying, and one thing I didn't. We're dealing with 1 out of every 5 students that are that are in need of special services. Jerry just reported that 19.5%. We used to be a district high functioning, and we still are, that we're dealing with about 1 out of every 6 or 7 students that were special services. We're laying a lot of education on the backs of teachers, and they're doing a fabulous job. If you look at the growth that everybody wants to come here with special needs, as well as other citizens are coming into our community. And our teachers keep doing a fabulous job, but when is that going to break also? When is that going to break? And class averages or small class sizes throughout this district for every teacher, the best we can do is the best as possible. So, but I'd be willing to wait. Maybe the legislature gives us some kind of feedback under the legislative weekend, February 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. But I don't know if we have to wait till April to make the decision. But I could wait for a little while.
Yeah. So Dr. Cleveland, just based off of what you're hearing, the conversation, do you have a recommendation at this time that you would like to give?
I think that I guess I would like to have a little additional information, but I agree with both Board Member Tyler and Tripp that we can't wait forever. I'm hoping that that they'll push that education budget early and make the governor say yes or no on it early, and we would get that information. That's only happened once in all the years that I've been here, that they got the education budget to the governor early enough that we had that information. But I do think that it's hard to make a decision when you don't know what money you're going to have.
Well,
And what other things are going to have to be cut if they don't fix this problem with running the money through the formula. And they're working on it. And I really believe, having talked to them, they are trying to find a way, because what you've done are the districts that stepped forward and did what the state asked us to do, in effect, are being punished for having done it. And so the other is that we have good allies with regards to Las Cruces and Gadsden, and they're in the same boat, and they have been talking with their legislative delegations about that and working very hard to get some kind of a fix in the formula. But I do think that it's hard. It's really hard to explain. I mean, it really is. If you spend a whole lot more money on one group of kids than we do for other kids, and what do you say to the parents of those other children? I mean, what do you say to them? So it's the other is, I think the program has done a lot of good, and I'm kind of optimistic that over time it would grow. I would really, because our cyber secondary program has done very well. And so I don't know why we would not see that in our elementary program. I do also want to comment that they have really made some improvements. I think you've shared, they made some gains and some really good improvements. They are really to be commended for having stepped up and done that. And so, we were looking several months ago, we were really worried about student performance. It's still not quite where the others are, but it is much improved. And, I think that's another factor you have to look at, though, is student performance. And then my last comment is to Board Member Scott. We had a homeschool program in the district for many years, and it ran out of Enchanted Hills. Carl Lepelman was the principal there, and it was very interesting, very much like that. And then eventually it just kind of went away. I don't know. Families changed, children grew up, and the program kind of disappeared. But we did have a homeschool program that was a half-day program, and it was a very successful program for how long, Carl? How long did you have that program?
I think a lot of that had to do with we didn't have
But it was not a cyber program.
we didn't have continuation in middle school. That was harder to do.
Yeah.
But it's very different, kind of program. They were in school every day, and we did that blended model every day. So I think students got the best of both. But again, in that funding model, I received full funding for a half-time student.
That's right.
This funding model is reversed. I mean, it's a different issue in terms of, you ask the right question, how can you have all these other needs or paying this much to this school? And in that situation, we're actually benefiting.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing it up, because that's the exact opposite of what we're dealing with now. The state that's not provided any kind of support.
Gianna, did you have something?
Sorry, I just wanted to also add a couple other positions that are shared between the school that we'd have to figure out what we're going to do with. One is a special education instructional leader. So the person that manages all the students with disabilities and IEPs, we'd have to find somebody to take that on. And the counselor is also shared. So there are a couple other positions we'd have to consider how we're going to fund. I mean, if you really want it to be a school, they're going to have everything that every other school has. So I forgot about those two.
And we have some time for that.
Oh, and nurse.
A little bit of time.
We have a little time.
Nurse as well.
We have a little time, but we don't have a long time.
Not a long time.
And we're not going to be able to wait until April.
No.
Okay. We have more comments. Do you have?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I mean, even if the budget comes back, great. We've been saying that our priority is CTE and building the new Spark and independent school. We don't have enough money for that. We need additional money for that. And so again, I hate for it to be a total numbers game, but for the number of students at Spark, which is less than 0.5% of the total number of students that we serve, for the amount of money that it costs, I just don't know fiscally and again, it breaks your heart, right? Because if it was my kid, and I think it's a fantastic program. And I think it's something, again, that would be nice to have and that we should strive for in the future. I just think that right now we're not in the position to sustain it and be responsible. So I just wanted to add that in there with our focus on CTE and trying to grow the other programs that we're not being able to serve students that we have waiting lists on. So here's a program we're trying to grow. We have other programs that we have kids, huge waiting lists on, and that we need to be able to properly fund those programs.
And did I see more comments on this side?
No, I'm good. You mean which direction? I say we hold off. Is what I would say. Yeah, let's give us a little more time. But I'm in agreement with everyone. I don't want to wait till April, but I'd say we go back and look at this. And maybe I missed it, but I still don't know what the total dollar amount is. Did I miss that?
It was $1 million.
Yeah.
For how much?
$1 million at one time, but 1.9, is that what it is? Because I kept
think
trying to do the math.
The operational budget is 900 and David?
Is that in here?
No, I didn't put it in here. I just put if you take the, no, but when I met with finance, it was 900, almost $1 million. And that was the operational budget. The staffing is to pay the staff, or the students generate almost $500,000. It costs $1 million to run the program. The student pure pupil expenditure generates about $500,000. So there's a $500,000 difference between how much it costs to operate and how much the program generates.
So $500,000.
I think one of the key things up there is the per pupil expenditure over the 2 years. Yeah.
Okay. We're kind of in two different places, I think, is where we are.
Want me to make a motion? I will, but it's not the motion that you want.
So if we do hold off, Jeff is saying not till April because it's getting late. That would be February. Would we know anything? Is it really worth it to hold off, I guess is the question. Is it going to help us? Is it going to make a difference? That's what I'm not sure, is if it's going to make us a difference.
But it's just that we don't know.
Or are we just holding off because we don't want to make a decision right now?
Probably both.
Yeah.
I think once the session opens on the 17th of January, we see how quickly the governor's proposed budget is moving, and how and whether they're coming with. See, what we don't have right now, which is absolutely critical, is what is the fix? If they are not going to cut us the $3 million, what is the fix? And how are they going to address that? And one of the things that we definitely hope will not happen is the fix will be above the line. Because if they make the fix down below the line, in other words, it's not institutionalized, it's just an allocation for this year to fix that. When money gets tight, that below the line is going to go away. So it really needs to be above the line so that it's institutionalized and fixed permanently for those districts that did step forward. It's hard for people to understand, I think how it kind of worked, but they wanted this so badly. They said, if you'll do this, we're going to give you $13 million.
Mm-hmm.
And we did some really good things with it. Now, when they decide everybody's going to do it, they run it through the formula, and we're $3 million short. Las Cruces is short. I have been told $6 million. So, but they're a larger district, and instead of being an ELTP, they're K-12 plus. They're basically a year-round school district now. And so they got considerably more money because they increased the number of days even more than we did. The other thing is it looks like the one thing that we are absolutely sure about, because I guess there's never anything sure with the legislature, but it seems like it's going to happen that we're going to have those 10 additional days required. You don't hear anyone saying that's not going to happen.
No, it's going to happen.
So I think that's definitely, I think we can count on we're going to be going the longer school year that we're going right now, not longer than what we're going now, or very little difference than what we're going right now. What that could mean for Rio Rancho is we'll go that extra, then we'll take away that salary increase and we'll take away those programs that we promised our families and our staff that they would have if they did this in the first place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Madam President, I just want to say too, if we do move forward, it'll cost more than $1 million next year because we will have to figure out a way to staff those other positions that we currently don't have. So whether that's through stipends or it's through part-time hires,
Counselor, so
counselor, seal.
at Joe Harris,
Mhm.
we need to fill those positions by next year.
I guess that feeds into my next question, which was if we doubled the student population at Spark, how much would that increase our cost?
You'd have to add, I'm sorry, Board Member Scott,
Well,
you'd have
what,
to,
what she said is that right now the number of students only pays for half the program.
correct.
If we doubled the number of students, making it $1 million in, how much would we be losing then?
You'd probably be in the same boat, if not more. You still have to add more teachers for those students, so you still have to add that cost and all those other positions now to fund a full school. And at that point, you'd probably want to look at some half-time in-person staff if you're around 300 students.
So
you'd
how
be
can
looking.
we ever level? Is there a way to level the program?
Yeah, I mean,
now?
that's what I'm sitting here wondering
Or is
as
there
as
not?
we discuss this.
I don't know that I think you would need a much larger population in order to level it.
I mean, would that be our K through 12 program? Would that cost?
Maybe. I mean, for instance, when Joe Harris started and they only had 300 and some students, they had a lot of half-time support. They didn't even have full-time support at that time. So you end up with a school that only has a half-time counselor, half-time interventionist, half-time ELD, half-time SEAL. And that is really difficult to run a school with those half-time positions. Now he's at a point where he'll be able to have those full-time positions at his school, but serving Joe Harris full-time, they can't do that and serve Spark. Like it's just, and no other school has to do that. So quite honestly, that staff is feeling that. So they would have to generate 400 to 500 students. And then you're going to have to be looking at where you do place them. Where do you place the students? Like the building piece is really important moving forward. If we're going to grow this program, we have to commit to a building, just like we're going to have to for cyber. It can't stay at any elementary campus and grow. There's no space for it.
Now you just confused me because right now Joe Harris is not at capacity.
Correct.
And so that 87 students really added to his head count population for the use of teachers. What I'm saying is, in other words, if you were at Enchanted Hills Elementary, which is at full capacity, and they have the same, do they have the same number of counselors, the same number of?
Yes, they do. But Madam President, what you're looking at is having to service students who are in person and then trying to service students who are online, which make it really difficult because sometimes I guess the best way to say this is they're Joe Harris employees. So they're mainly dealing with the students at Joe Harris, and then Ms. Aker has to call them when there's a situation and try to find time within that schedule that they've already built to try to come down and support Spark. So there was an emergency, there was a situation with some students, and counselors typically do lessons in the classrooms every day. So if you have a situation at Spark, you're pulling from another classroom where that staff member is allocated to support Spark. So some of the allocations are Joe Harris allocations, and they're just helping out with Spark. Some are allocated as a split 50-50, but they're really not 50-50 in the number of students. So that's what makes it really tricky. Next year at the population they'll have, yes, they'll have 4, they'll be on Joe Harris's staffing allocations. But it's very difficult for them to do both schools. I guess that's the best way that I can say it is they struggle with trying to service both, particularly when the kids aren't there every day. And so forming the relationships, trying to pinpoint what the concerns are takes a lot more time because you don't know the students necessarily as much as you might if they were there every day and you're in their classroom doing lessons.
But the actual number of students would be the head count now plus 87, which is still dramatically under what teachers are having to do at the other schools.
200 less.
But it's more about,
It's just like saying that the support staff at Independence High School isn't needed because they don't have the same number of students as Rio Rancho High School. They still have counselors there to support the students
No,
at
I'm
Independence,
agreeing
even though,
with that.
so I mean, you can't compare, it's not apples and apples as far as numbers. And I think when it started to go off the rails is when she said initially Joe Harris didn't have full allocation because they didn't hit their threshold of what number they needed for enrollment for Joe Harris. Now they've met that enrollment threshold. So now they need those people full time, and we're asking them to do double duty by also still serving Spark Academy halftime.
And
Is
you
that
have to
correct?
remember, it's not necessarily, because we've had this conversation so many times with between Trent and Rachel and myself. It's not the number of students. It's the fact that it's two separate schools they're servicing. So it's like asking the counselor from Enchanted Hills to come over now and service the kids at Spark, or from another school to go do that. Like, they really need their own staff to support their students. Like every school does, needs to be part of their staff, their community. And initially it worked because they didn't have that full caseload that other schools do. But now it's very difficult to do that. You can't get on, she can't go to all the classes in Joe Harris and go to all the classes in Spark and do both. It's just the virtual piece has made it very difficult. And I don't know if Trent can explain it better than me, because he's the one that's heard it the most, but that's been a really significant challenge for them.
You can come up, Trent. Come up to the microphone so they can hear you online.
Maybe he can answer it better.
Though you're tall, maybe it'll go right over to
I think
Just adjusting it for you.
I think one of the things that we haven't really talked about is the fact that Joe Harris is on a growth trend as well. So we're getting to the point where the staff where we are splitting and sharing are getting to a point where we would need all the full allocation that we're getting. And in fact, we're probably, due to growth and budget, we're actually in a situation where we're probably under allocated compared to some other schools of the same size or close to the same size. So we're getting to the point where we're not the smallest school in the district, and I would predict that next year we won't be the smallest school in the district. So that's part of the equation that we haven't really heard this evening.
What's the challenge with adding 87 kids to what that staff is doing?
It becomes a big scheduling conflict. It becomes very, very difficult. As Jana had said earlier, with conducting almost two schools separately in the same building, and there's some, there's staff members that were members of my staff that I hired, and then that were given additional responsibilities of having to serve students in a different capacity. Not so much that's a different school, but it's just a completely different capacity because of the online component of that, and then with having students there one day a week right now, oftentimes they're trying to see and provide services for those students within that one day. Then we're talking about, which I think is a great idea, to add another day of in-person instruction. Then it becomes even more difficult to split that staff into schedule.
I think it pinpoints on what you said, Board Member Tyler. The needs are still there, even if it's 200 kids or 300 kids. It's hard to have somebody there only half time. It's really difficult.
So since we had Trent come up, Rachel Ray did you want to say something? Just since we had Trent come up, I just thought if you wanted to say something too, you're welcome to. Don't feel like you have to. I always tell my students, you can pass.
That's very broad. Thank you, President Galbraith, Board members, Dr. Cleveland. Thank you for being really considerate about the needs of our students. I think, you have seen that the families really appreciate having this different approach. A lot of families, one of the questions that you asked Secretary Scott about students wanting to come from similar programs in Albuquerque, we have had some come from like homeschool options and have said that they really appreciate the level of support that our teachers can provide, as opposed to learning how to implement this curriculum at home. So they appreciate that level of support and that collaboration. And then to the point of having like that next step to the middle school, I think that this provides a nice scaffold to getting to the hybrid model that they provide at Cyber Academy. And so being able to provide that for families that have had success with Cyber Academy is another thing that I've heard from a lot of the families too. And I know this is a difficult decision for you guys because you're thinking of, the big picture. And I'm a big picture person too. So I understand that. But we've really appreciated this opportunity to be able to try to grow, and we'd like to continue to do that. You know, if you were willing to postpone the decision and hear some options for how we could adapt the program to help continue to have that option for families in maybe a different way, that's something that I'm willing to dedicate time to. And I know a lot of my staff is here, so they are also willing to bring that to you as well. Just something to think about additional time. And then another piece would be that we might be able to bring to you a little bit of data about how many students we might be able to bring in to the school, and then maybe how we could alleviate the pressure of the shared staff as well. So maybe that would be some things that we could address that we would be able to bring to you at a later time. So.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming up.
I sure don't want to lose the point that Jenna made earlier, and that is that the long-term solution, should the program continue, can't be at Joe Harris. And so I think that's the thing you have to look, is it a K-12 school? APS has a K-12 school that is virtual, or would there be some other model for it? I don't know. I mean, we haven't thought through that. But as Trent said, it's a high growth area. It's one of the fastest growing areas in all of Rio Rancho, and Los Diamantes and all of that around there. And so I think it's reasonable to think that his student population is going to continue to grow 100 this year, 100 next year. And so regardless of which decision the board makes, I think it's just a given. It can't stay there very long.
Okay, go ahead, Gary.
I'm just thinking about growth, and when you said that, I'm thinking about where I live, and I see about 1,000 houses going up by Vista Grande and Sandia Vista Elementary School, and it's just everywhere, you know. So looking at each school, it's just mind-boggling right now.
Yeah.
And we have a real need for another middle school, terrible need for another middle school. That's one of our greatest. I mean, we're pushing at Lincoln, we're pushing at Mountain View. We do have some room at Rio Rancho Middle, but do we really want to turn it back into the mid-high? I mean, you know, we're not going to be able to pack that building again. It was not the best situation. It was one that we had at the time. It was our only option. But, you know, we don't want to get back up to how many we had there before, which was, what, 2,000? I think at one time. Yeah, we don't want to do that.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the board? I make a motion to move the decision of this to our, the first meeting in March.
I'll second that.
Okay. Kim, do you want to take a roll call for us on that motion? Thank you, Kim.
Thank you. I just had to capture the motion. Vice President Morgan,
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp.
Can I ask for a friendly amendment that we do it in February, maybe the second meeting?
Second week in February. If we're already in the middle of voting, can we amend it? We can amend it anytime, can't we? Should we hold off and finish this and finish this one? Okay.
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
I'll vote no.
Board Member Tyler,
No.
President Galbraith.
I'll vote no to my own motion so we can amend the motion.
Okay, the motion fails 3-0 or 3-2. Motion fails 3-2.
Okay, motion fails. Okay. Gary, do you want to make the motion?
I was looking at Jessica because she's good at wording it.
I don't know if she
I
likes
make
the
a
motion.
that we will make, that this decision is made the second board meeting in February.
I'll second that.
And if you'll take a roll call for us.
Okay, so Gary made that motion, right? And
I seconded it.
and thank you, Secretary Scott and Vice President Morgan.
Yes.
Secretary Scott,
Yes.
Board Member Tripp,
Yes.
Board Member Tyler,
Yes.
and President Galbraith.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
President Galbraith, is there additional information that you want in February, or you just want me to
what I would like to see in February is, I know the school was just talking, Rachel was just talking about the possibility of bringing some things to the board. If you would like to gather those things, we would love to see them. I cannot promise you that that's going to make a big change on what happens, but and so knowing that, and that's going to be work for you, please know that. But we would love to see those things. Are there other things from the board that you would like to see? We definitely want to know and be updated on what's happening in Santa Fe. I'm sure we'll all be watching, but we'll definitely need an update on what's happening in Santa Fe from the district. And I think that covers it. Yes?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay. Our last item is B, to consider the approval of award RFP 2023-010 FAC Architect Design Services CTE Center renovations, and Michael Madrid, our purchasing director, will present.
Good evening and season's greetings, Board President Galbraith, Superintendent Dr. Cleveland, and members of the board. I think Dr. Cleveland did a really good job on introducing this action item on her comments earlier. What we're asking for is an award of RFP 2023-010-FAC for architectural design services for the CTE building renovations be issued to Vigil and Associates Architectural Group as the highest ranked offer for this procurement. The district received 6 responses to the solicitation. I think all 6 firms are very qualified and have done extensive design work on K-12. All firms are out of Albuquerque. The firms that provided a response are Design Plus LLC, Greer Stafford / SJCF Architect Inc., Sam Sterling Architecture, Studio Southwest Architects, the Hartman and Majewski Group, Design Group, and Vigil and Associates Architectural Group. The solicitation was initiated on behalf of the Facilities Department and is typical with these RFPs. We conduct what I consider is a pass-fail verification, where we ask a member from the user department, in this case facilities, one of my staff members and myself, and we go through the contents of all the submittals. We inventory the content. We ensure that they provided all the affidavits and they signed all those affidavits, that they acknowledge any addendas and any other documentation that the procurement boilerplate required in order to ensure their responsiveness. All 6 firms are deemed to be responsive, and they were elevated to the evaluation committee for initial scoring and ranking. The firms were ranked, and the top 3 firms were selected for interviews on December the 15th, 2022. We conducted interviews with Greer Stafford, Studio Southwest, and Vigil and Associates. We posed several questions to the various firms. We scored their interviews and we added their scores to the initial evaluation to compile a final ranking and recommendation to the board. Behind the board memo is the scoring matrix, which includes the interview scores. And with that, I'll stand for any questions. And when we get done with questions, I'll redirect the board back to the requested action.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Questions from the board on this side, Jessica or Noreen? Any questions, comments? This one, questions, comments? Okay. So we'll go ahead and take action. Okay. If anyone would like to make a motion on this.
This is Board Member Tyler. I'd like to make a motion to award RFP number 2023-010-FAC Architect Design Services for the CTE building renovations to Vigil and Associates Architectural Group as the highest ranked offer.
Board Member Jeff Morgan, I second.
We have a motion by Jessica Tyler and a second by Jeff Morgan. And Kim, can you take a roll call vote for us?
Vice President Morgan?
Yes.
Secretary Scott?
Yes.
Board Member Tripp?
Yes.
Board Member Tyler?
Yes.
And President Galbraith?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. All right. For advanced planning, on the 16th, there's Martin Luther King Day, so all the schools will be closed. The 17th, the legislative session will begin. On the 19th, we will have a tentative hearing. You'll get more information on that as it develops. On the 20th, there's the district spelling bee that will be here in the boardroom. We have a board workshop on the 23rd at 4 p.m. and our regular board meeting that same day at 5:30. Did you have a question, Noreen, as I'm going through?
I was just going to say that I'd like to have it on the record that I cannot make the March or the January 19th meeting. I have a long scheduled out of town trip.
Okay. We'll make that note. Thank you. On the 24th is the governor's prayer breakfast. You'll see invitations on your desk. And also February 2nd through the 4th is the NMSBA Board Institute. That's up in Santa Fe. Does anyone know if they'll be able to make that currently? Noreen is planning to go. Jessica will not be able to go. Gary, will you be able to go?
I had to cancel my hotel.
Okay, so
I was going to be there and just stay there, but I'm going to be coming home.
okay, so we'll get you registered though, at least for the conference. And then Jeff.
I will not make it. I'll be out of town.
Okay, I can only go for Thursday, so I don't know if it's worth paying for me because I will be out of town on the next 2 days. So I think I'll just have to catch. I'm sad to miss this one. It's actually one of my favorite ones to go to, but so it looks like just two of us for sure will be
So
able
this
to.
is just Noreen and Gary.
Yeah, and I would go on that Thursday, but it's only one thing that I can hit.
Okay.
So thank you.
Just one
Yes.
quick thing. Yeah, you remember our lobbyist said that there would probably be better uses of board members' time. So if you can't make it, and certainly if you have Noreen there, you have someone to represent the board, but that really your time would be better spent at committees and some other things. So we will continue to keep you apprised of that. And when there's an opportunity, we'll let you know if you are free and could go. I still think it's, it'll be great that we'll have some representation there, but you will have other opportunities and maybe even better ones to be able to talk to people in Santa Fe. I think, one of our members of the delegation said, we're always glad to see you, but it's kind of everybody shows up and walks through and you work, it's not all that's beneficial. So I think there'll be other opportunities is my point.
Thank you, Dr. Cleveland. For all the additional dates, please see your agenda for the additional dates that are coming up. And with that, thank you everyone tonight, and our meeting is adjourned. Go with close. We're done.
Adjourned and closed.